You walk into a room and feel it instantly. A soft jolt, a sense that you've been here before, heard these words before, lived this moment already. The Deja Vu Trap is a glitch at the edge of perception. It doesn't shout, it arrives quietly. The briefest pause in the flow of reality, unsettling and impossible to explain. The world blurs. For a few seconds, the present doubles back on itself, and you're not sure if you're remembering or just dreaming with your eyes open. The Deja Vu Trap is deeply psychological. The mind wants time to be a straight line, past behind, future ahead. But in these moments, the line curves. Your brain insists it recognizes this moment, not as a memory, but as a loop, familiarity without origin. You search for a cause, a forgotten dream, a flicker of memory, a hidden echo in the brain circuits. But there is only the sensation, a lingering strangeness, and then it fades, like a skipped heartbeat you can't recall but know you felt. Most people drift through the Deja Vu Trap dozens of times in a lifetime, never sure if it's a trick of memory or a crack in the code of reality. You wonder, was this a message? A glitch? A warning? Some scientists call it a neurological hiccup. The brain misfires, mixing signals from short and long-term memory. But the explanation doesn't erase the feeling. For a moment, you are unstuck from time, outside of cause and effect, staring at the seams where experience stitches itself together. The Deja Vu Trap doesn't demand your belief. It simply arrives, then leaves you with questions that have no answers. Did you dream this exact conversation? Did your mind skip ahead, reading reality before it happened? Or are you looping through a script you've played before? Life as a rerun, time folding quietly behind your back. Sometimes the Deja Vu Trap leaves you with a sense of fate, as if the future has already happened and you are only catching up. There's no real way to prepare for the Deja Vu Trap. It bypasses logic, turning certainty into fog. You might find yourself looking for patterns, waiting for the next repetition, wondering if you are living in a loop you can't see. You become hyper-aware, scanning your own thoughts for evidence that you are remembering the present, not just living it. Each time it happens, you ask the same silent question: is this a sign or just noise in the system? The cost of the Deja Vu Trap is subtle. A flicker of doubt, a crack in the confidence that time moves only forward. For a moment, you question whether your life is a single, unbroken thread or a tangled knot of repeating moments. You might laugh it off, or feel a shiver, or tell someone who shrugs and moves on. But for a few seconds, you're alone, with the uncomfortable possibility that reality is less solid than you thought. Some people chase the Deja Vu Trap, seeing it as a sign of intuition, psychic ability, or proof that time is more flexible than it seems. Others try to forget it, treating each incident as a harmless bug in the software of the mind. But the experience lingers in the background, a reminder that your grip on now is never as secure as you want it to be. You carry on, but the question remains: how much of your life is lived for the first time, and how much is just memory echoing back endlessly from the walls of the present? If the Deja Vu Trap finds you tonight, pause. Let the moment repeat. Notice the sensation without trying to solve it. The mind will always look for a cause, but sometimes the loop is the message. Time is not a straight line, and you are not as anchored as you believe. The moment passes, and the world moves on, but for a heartbeat, you glimpse the hidden machinery, time folding, life repeating, the trap resetting, just out of reach.
Living the same day twice. You wake up, and the light feels familiar. The sounds, the faces, the words, they fall into place exactly as they did before. You move through the motions, answering questions you feel you've already heard, repeating gestures as if following invisible stage directions. Living the same day twice is less a story about magic and more a sensation that routine has become a prison. You wonder if this is déjà vu stretched thin, or if you slipped into a glitch in the system. A quiet repetition, the world caught on a loop. The mind tries to rebel against the sameness, scanning for any sign that the day might break pattern, but the hours unfold as expected. Breakfast tastes the same, conversations land in the same places, the same mistakes threaten to repeat themselves. You feel a rising urge to disrupt the sequence, to make a strange choice just to prove you still have agency. But the gravity of routine is strong. Most days pass with barely a ripple. Most people know the feeling. Weeks vanish in a blur, each day indistinguishable from the last. The calendar fills up with recycled tasks and recycled thoughts. The past bleeds into the present predicts the future. You are left asking whether you are living or just acting out a script written long ago, unable to remember when things last felt truly new. The cost of living the same day twice is subtle, an erosion of wonder, a gentle dulling of the senses. You stop noticing small changes. You move on autopilot, letting the world carry you. You might feel safe, but you are not awake. The only way out is to break the rhythm, even in a small way. Otherwise, the days keep folding back on themselves, silently, endlessly. The infinite Monday illusion. You tell yourself it's just another Monday, but Monday never seems to end. It's always almost over, but not quite. The alarm goes off, the same routines click into place, and before you know it, you're back at the beginning, repeating tasks you swore you'd already finished. The infinite Monday illusion is a quiet trick of the mind, a sense that time is not moving forward, just circling back. This isn't just about workdays or calendars, it's the weight of repetition itself. You feel it in the monotony of obligations, in the way stress echoes from one week to the next, in the sense that rest is always just out of reach. You chase a future that never quite arrives. Mondays become symbolic, a marker that the loop never truly breaks, that you are always starting over, always waiting for a week that finally feels different. The illusion is strengthened by the way society structures time. The same meetings, the same commutes, the same deadlines. You start to believe that some days never really end, that the clock resets, but nothing changes. You may laugh about another case of the Mondays, but beneath the joke is fatigue, a longing for time to break pattern, to reveal something unexpected. The infinite Monday illusion asks, what if the routine never ends? What if this is not a phase, but a structure? The mind aches for escape, but sometimes the only rebellion is a small one, a new path to work, an unexpected conversation, a pause to notice a detail you usually miss. Otherwise, Monday repeats, quietly folding the rest of the week into itself, again and again.
Is time just a loop? You were taught that time moves in one direction, past, present, future, a straight line, an arrow shot from somewhere to somewhere else. But sometimes the evidence doesn't add up. The patterns repeat. The memories feel recycled. and history echoes with uncanny precision. You begin to ask the question, is time just a loop? The thought is unsettling, but also strangely comforting. If time is a loop, maybe nothing is ever truly lost. Maybe every mistake is a chance to try again. Every ending just a hidden beginning. But the other side of the loop is darker. A sense the change is impossible, that you are trapped, destined to circle the same events forever, unable to break out. Physics hints at time's strangeness. Particles move backward. Clocks tick at different rates. Some equations don't care about past or future. Myths speak of cycles, reincarnations, eternities hidden in plain sight. Your own life starts to feel like evidence. The same arguments, the same fears, the same wishes that never go away. You look for proof that the loop can be broken, or at least noticed, but every sign points back to the start. Is time just a loop? You may never know, but you feel the question in your bones, especially on days that refuse to end and moments that seem to circle back with perfect, chilling symmetry. The present slips into the past invades the future, and you find yourself asking if you've really moved at all, or if you're just living the same moment over and over inside the soft machinery of a world that never really lets you go. Prophetic dreams or time slips. You wake from a dream, the details vivid and strange, but somehow it lingers. Days, weeks, or even years later, the real world catches up. You recognize a face, hear a sentence, enter a room, and there it is, a scene already played out in your mind. You ask yourself if you've seen the future or if you've simply forgotten the memory until now. The experience is quiet, unsettling, almost private. You wonder if you are witnessing prophetic dreams or if you've slipped for just a moment through the boundaries of time. Prophetic dreams or time slips are among the oldest mysteries. Stories about them echo across centuries and cultures. Pharaohs with visions, prophets with warnings, ordinary people who wake with a sense of certainty. Science shrugs, calling it coincidence, pattern recognition, or the brain's way of processing unfinished business. But science does not erase the sensation. When a dream unfolds in waking life, it does not feel accidental. The psychology is layered. Dreams are fragments of thought, memory, fear, and longing. They weave together images from the past, symbols from your day, worries about the future. Sometimes the patterns make sense only later, when life seems to match a scene you thought you'd only imagined. The mind wants to explain this. Was it a warning, a glitch, a message from the unconscious, or proof that time is more flexible than it appears? Most people experience at least one moment that feels like a prophecy. You brush it off, or you tell someone only to see skepticism in their eyes. But it lingers. You start to wonder about the boundaries between dreaming and waking, between future and memory. You look for signs that your dreams are more than random images, that you can glimpse what is coming before it arrives. Prophetic dreams or time slips are often mundane. An encounter, a phrase, a decision you already knew you would make, but sometimes they are weighty, warnings of loss, glimpses of love, moments of danger or hope. When the dream matches the world, it leaves a crack in your confidence about cause and effect. Are you predicting, remembering, or just caught in a loop? The cost is subtle. You start to doubt your grip on reality. You hesitate to share these moments, fearing ridicule or dismissal. You wonder if you should act on your dreams, change your choices, avoid a place, trust a vision. Or you decide it's all noise, a trick of the brain, something to forget. But the feeling remains, a sense that time is porous, that the boundaries are thinner than you thought. Some seek out prophetic dreams or time slips, hoping for answers, control, or guidance. Others try to avoid them, afraid of what they might reveal. Either way, the phenomenon is hard to escape. Each time you see the future before it arrives, the line between dream and reality blurs a little more. If you find yourself shaken by a prophetic dream or time slip tonight, pause. Let the feeling move through you. You don't have to explain it or act on it. The mind wants certainty, but time offers only questions. The experience is not a gift or a curse, just another way the world resists your need for order. Some things are meant to be lived, not understood. When the future feels close, let it be close. When dreams spill over into waking life, let them ripple, quietly, beneath the surface. The rest of time will go on, with or without your certainty.
When the future feels familiar. There are days when you step into the unknown, and it doesn't feel unknown at all. The details line up with uncanny precision. The future feels familiar, as if you've already visited, already learned the lesson, already made the mistake. You might recognize a place you've never been, a voice you've never heard, a decision you somehow know you'll make before the choice is even presented. You pause, searching for memory, but the recognition is out of reach. The future feels like an old friend you can't quite place. The sensation is not loud or dramatic. It creeps in at the edges, quietly suggesting that life is less linear than it seems. You wonder if you are repeating yourself, circling a path you've walked before. Are you stuck in a loop? Or is the mind just reaching for patterns in the noise? Is it intuition or just déjà vu in disguise? When the future feels familiar, you say, but you're never sure whether it's prophecy, coincidence, or something stranger. Psychologically, the feeling comes from the mind's drive for prediction. You are built to anticipate, to imagine what might happen next, to fill in the blanks with old experience. Sometimes the brain is too good at it, so good that it tricks you into feeling certain about what comes next. You act with confidence, trusting that your instincts are more than luck. Sometimes they are, sometimes they are not. Most people experience the future as familiar in flashes, just before an important conversation, in the early days of a new relationship, in a crisis or a breakthrough. The sensation gives you comfort, as if you were not completely lost, as if you were not alone. Other times, it brings discomfort, a suspicion that you are only playing out a script, acting out a destiny written somewhere beyond your control. The cost is subtle but real. You might grow complacent, assuming that outcomes are already decided. Or you become anxious, looking for hidden signs that you are missing, trying to decode the feeling before it fades. You may even act carelessly, convinced you know how things will end, only to be surprised by reality's indifference to your certainty. When the future feels familiar, the line between choice and fate blurs. Are you shaping events, or are they shaping you? Is this intuition, or just memory in disguise? You look for proof, but the only evidence is the sensation itself, a fleeting, unprovable sense that the world has turned this way before. If you find yourself in a moment when the future feels familiar tonight, don't rush to explain or control it. Notice the feeling, let it linger, but resist the urge to read too much meaning into it. The future is always uncertain, even when it feels close. Familiarity does not guarantee outcome, and intuition is not destiny. Sometimes the mind simply rehearses the unknown until it feels safe enough to step forward. And sometimes that is enough. The never-ending conversation. You find yourself talking in circles. The topic is old, the argument's familiar. Every word lands in a place it's landed before. The never-ending conversation isn't about misunderstanding, it's about repetition. Old wounds reopened. The same jokes, the same complaints, the same silences. You finish someone's sentence or they finish yours, but it doesn't feel like closeness. It feels like being stuck, trapped in a loop of words that will never resolve. The never-ending conversation is psychological. At its core is a need for closure that never arrives. You revisit the same topics, hoping for a different result, but nothing changes. Old relationships become scripts, played out over years, each new attempt at communication spiraling back to the same unsolved riddle. You want to move on, but something in the pattern keeps pulling you back. Most people have at least one never-ending conversation, sometimes with a parent, a partner, a friend, sometimes with themselves. You tell yourself, this time will be different. You prepare new arguments, new evidence, new emotions, but the outcome never shifts. The conversation always doubles back, quietly erasing any hope for a final answer. The cost of the never-ending conversation is quiet but corrosive. Resentment builds, intimacy erodes. You feel invisible, unheard, even as you speak. The ritual itself becomes the point, not the words. The act of talking is an attempt to fill the gap left by what can't be fixed. Psychologically, this loop is a way to delay acceptance. As long as you are still talking, there is still hope, still the illusion of progress. The conversation keeps you connected to something that might otherwise be lost. Or it keeps you distracted from a truth you're not ready to face. That some things will never be understood, never resolved, never undone. If you find yourself in a never-ending conversation tonight, pause. Notice the script you're following, the way your words chase their own tail. Ask what you hope to find on the other side. Sometimes the answer is closure. Sometimes it's just comfort in the repetition. The conversation may never end, but you are allowed to step away, to accept what won't be solved, to let the words fall silent, to find peace in the unfinished story. The never-ending conversation is not failure, it's a pattern. Each time you step out, even for a moment, you remind yourself that life is more than a loop of words. Meaning comes not from resolution, but from the willingness to let go, even if the dialogue goes on without you, somewhere in the back of your mind.
Memory leaks across time. A scent, a sound, a phrase. Suddenly, a memory you can't place slips into consciousness. It's clear, but contextless. You feel the weight of something half-remembered, a place you never visited, a face you've never named, a feeling that belongs to another time entirely. Memory leaks across time, never asking permission. The boundaries blur. You cannot tell whether this is nostalgia for your own past or a phantom echo leaking in from somewhere else. The mind's architecture is not a tidy archive. Memories bleed, blend, and recombine, smudging the difference between what was real and what was imagined. Some of these leaks are simple. You misremember the details of your childhood. Insert a modern word into an old story. Remember an event that never happened. Others are stranger. You know a city's streets before you've walked them. You recall a conversation that took place in a dream, but find yourself searching for evidence it was real. Memory leaks across time because the mind is not a clock. It's a network of associations, tangled and alive. Neurons fire and connect, linking unrelated moments. A random sound in the present can call forth the mood of a lost afternoon.
a childhood worry, or a face from an old photograph. You try to place the memory, but it resists. It is slippery, half submerged, and somehow more real for being incomplete. Most people experience memory leaks as passing confusion. You mention a detail in conversation only to realize it doesn't fit the story. You are struck by déjà vu, convinced you've been here before, but you know it's impossible. Sometimes memory leaks across time as a kind of longing for places you've never seen, lives you've never lived. The past and future dissolve into a feeling, powerful and directionless. The cost of memory leaks across time is subtle. You begin to mistrust your own history. You question what actually happened, where the boundaries are, whether your life is a coherent story or just a patchwork of leaks and echoes. Sometimes you feel haunted, not by ghosts, but by your own mind's inability to keep time straight. You wonder if you are remembering forward or backward, if your memories are truly yours or borrowed from someone or something else. Psychologically, memory leaks are both a flaw and a feature. They allow you to imagine, to empathize, to learn from experiences you never had. But they also distort, confuse, and mislead. The mind, desperate for meaning, stitches the leaks together into new patterns. Some become myths, some anxieties, some just background noise in the story of your life. If you notice memory leaking across time tonight, don't rush to fix it. Let the confusion settle. Ask what the leak is trying to show you. A feeling, a warning, a hope you forgot. The mind is always leaking, always crossing boundaries, always borrowing from tomorrow and yesterday. The leak is not a flaw, but a reminder that time in the mind is not a line, but a map with no clear borders. You live with the consequences, quietly, every day. Sometimes, you find a piece of yourself in a memory you never owned. Sometimes, you forget things that matter deeply. The leak goes on, silent and unstoppable, shaping your sense of self with fragments that refuse to belong to any one place or time. Your story is always changing, even as you try to hold it still.
The eternal return theory. You wake, work, eat, rest, repeat. The seasons change, but always cycle back. Birth, death, decay, rebirth. Life seems to spin in circles. The eternal return theory is both an ancient philosophy and a haunting suspicion. What if everything you do will happen again, exactly as it did before, forever? Every pain, every joy, every small mistake. The universe as a wheel, not a road. The eternal return theory is deeply psychological. The mind wants progress, the comfort of linear time, the hope that every step takes you somewhere new. But history repeats. You notice it in your habits, your relationships, the world's endless cycles of rise and fall. Civilizations rise, empires collapse, love is found and lost. The faces change, the story remains. You find yourself playing the same roles, learning the same lessons, feeling the same ache as those who came before. Most people brush off the idea as a thought experiment, but the feeling can be visceral. Some mornings you wake with the certainty that you've done this before. You see it in the calendar's relentless repetition, in rituals and holidays, in the faces of your children and parents,
in the persistence of old wounds. Every ending feels like a rehearsal for something that already happened or will happen again. The cost of the eternal return theory is existential. If everything is destined to repeat, where is freedom? Is regret meaningless or absolute? Do your choices matter, or is everything predetermined by the shape of the wheel? You can feel trapped, caught in cycles you cannot break, forced to relive your mistakes, powerless to change the script. Yet there is also comfort in the theory. If you return, so does everyone you love. Nothing is ever truly lost, only postponed. The pain of endings softens if every loss is temporary. The universe becomes a place of infinite second chances and infinite consequences. Every act matters because every act will echo forever. Psychologically, the eternal return theory is a mirror for anxiety and hope. It amplifies the feeling that life is a loop, not a journey. You may feel bored, stifled by repetition, or you may find meaning in ritual, in the steady return of familiar faces and seasons. The mind makes peace with the loop by finding patterns, building meaning, refusing to see repetition as failure. If you find yourself haunted by the eternal return theory tonight, pause. Ask what it would mean to live as if this moment will come again and again. Would you change your choices, or simply notice them more? The theory may never be proven, but it shapes the way you see the world, a place where nothing is ever truly gone, and everything returns eventually. The eternal return theory is not an answer, but a question that bends time in on itself. Each life, each action, each sorrow and joy, part of a loop you can't quite see, but feel in every repetition. The end is always the beginning, the circle always closing.
Have we met before? Paradox. You meet someone for the first time, but something in their eyes is instantly familiar. A gesture, a turn of phrase, a laugh. None of it new, yet impossible to place. You ask yourself, have we met before? The paradox is subtle but jarring. You search your memory and come up empty, but the feeling lingers. You wonder if this is déjà vu, coincidence, or evidence of something stranger, a meeting outside the boundaries of ordinary time. The "have we met before" paradox is deeply psychological. The mind is a pattern seeker, desperate for connections. Faces blur and repeat across the years. Voices echo from the past into the present. Sometimes, a stranger's presence seems to unlock memories you don't recognize as your own. You question whether you are remembering, projecting, or imagining entirely. Most people encounter the paradox at least once. A casual introduction triggers a sense of history, shared or parallel. You might even finish their sentences, sense their mood, or anticipate their reactions as if you've known them for years. The moment is brief, but unsettling. You feel time folding in on itself, two timelines overlapping for a heartbeat before diverging again. The "have we met before" paradox is uncertainty. You begin to question the reliability of your memory, the solidity of your sense of self. Are you simply sensitive to mannerisms, or is there something larger at work? Some turn to mystical explanations, reincarnation, soulmates, quantum entanglement. Others brush it off, a trick of the mind, an evolutionary shortcut. Psychologically, the paradox exposes the loops in your perception of time and identity. You live in a world of recurring patterns, archetypes, and familiar dynamics. Every relationship is a chance to replay or resolve an old script. Sometimes you are drawn to people who resemble past loves, lost friends, or even strangers glimpsed in a dream. The mind prefers the comfort of the known, even if it must invent history to create it. If you find yourself trapped in the "have we met before" paradox tonight, let the feeling be. Don't force a memory or an explanation. Some connections defy logic, belonging to a space outside the tidy order of events. You may never know if you have truly met before, or if the mind is simply reminding you that life is full of echoes, reflections, and repetitions. The "have we met before" paradox is not a question to be answered, but an experience to be noticed. Each meeting, each flash of recognition, each unexplained bond, a reminder that time and identity are less linear than they appear. You continue on, uncertain, quietly changed by every stranger who feels like a memory.
When history repeats itself. You watch the news, read a book, or simply listen to old stories, and a pattern emerges. The faces change, the settings shift, but the core of the event is eerily familiar. War, betrayal, hope, collapse, an endless procession of themes. When history repeats itself, it is rarely loud or theatrical. It unfolds as a slow echo, a return to the same mistakes, the same dreams, the same unlearned lessons. The phrase "history repeats itself" is more than a cliché. It's a deep psychological recognition of time's loops. The mind wants to believe in progress, in a line drawn forward, but reality often cycles back. You see it in politics, in economies, in families. Empires rise and fall, ideologies recycle, revolutions collapse into new orthodoxies, and children repeat the unfinished stories of their parents. You notice the repetition, wonder if it could be different, but the cycle keeps turning. Most people sense the repetition long before they can name it. You see the warning signs, feel the déjà vu in the headlines, recognize the rhythm of events, even when the details are new. Sometimes the repetition is a comfort, a sense that nothing is unprecedented, that you are not alone in your struggle. Other times it is a source of despair, proof that no amount of knowledge or intention can escape the gravity of old habits. When history repeats itself, the cost is real. Progress slows, injustice lingers, hope is swallowed by cynicism. You begin to question the point of effort, the value of change, the meaning of agency. The loop tightens with every new cycle, each time you hope for difference, each time the outcome slips back into the old groove. The pattern is both visible and invisible, a subtle undercurrent that shapes every decision, every belief. Psychologically, repetition is both defense and prison. Societies and individuals alike cling to what is known, even when it is harmful. The pain of uncertainty, the risk of new mistakes, these drive people to repeat the past, to stick to roles and rituals handed down from those who came before. The comfort of familiarity is powerful, even when the outcome is suffering. But repetition is not destiny. Patterns can be broken, but only when they are seen. When history repeats itself, the invitation is not just to witness, but to notice the point at which choice is still possible. The mind resists change, prefers the safety of cycles, but real transformation is always a break with tradition,
a step outside the known. If you find yourself caught in the cycle when history repeats itself, pause. Notice the moment you've seen before, the argument, the decision, the hope, the failure. Ask what would happen if you acted differently, even if only in a small way. The loop loosens with awareness, with courage, with the willingness to become an ancestor to a different pattern. When history repeats itself, the temptation is to despair. But within every cycle is the possibility of change, however slight. The challenge is to remember that time is not only a loop, but a spiral. Each turn bringing you back to the same place, but never quite the same as before. In the space between repetition and renewal, you find your freedom.
The uncanny hour, clocks and glitches. There is a moment, late at night or in the dull hush of afternoon, when time slips. The clocks say one thing, your body another. You look up and an hour has disappeared, or a single minute stretches endlessly. The uncanny hour, clocks and glitches, arrives quietly, unremarked by the world around you, but felt in the bones. It is a disturbance in the machinery of ordinary time, a pause, a stutter, a fleeting sense that the rules are different now. The uncanny hour can be as mundane as staring at a clock that seems frozen, or as unsettling as finding yourself lost in thought only to realize you've lost half a day. Electronics blink the wrong numbers. Shadows lengthen in ways that make no sense. You are reminded of stories, time slips, haunted places, the legend of 3 a.m. when the world is said to be thinnest. But the true experience is quieter, a subtle feeling that you are out of sync, watching your own life from a distance. Most people experience the uncanny hour more often than they admit. You step into a room and the light feels wrong. You check your phone and the time is not what you expect. Traffic patterns break. The house is too quiet. The city too still. For a few moments you wonder if the world is running on a different clock, if you are somehow out of phase with reality. Then the feeling passes, and you're left with a vague unease, as if you've slipped between seconds and returned with your hair slightly out of place. The cost of the uncanny hour is not fear, but uncertainty. You realize that time is not a fixed universal rhythm, but a personal experience, elastic and unpredictable. The mind's faith in clocks is shaken. You question whether the past hour was wasted or just unaccounted for. Did you lose time, or did you simply step out of it? The experience is neither loss nor gain, just a reminder that you are not in control. Psychologically, clocks and glitches expose the artificiality of the systems you trust. You are taught to rely on time as structure, but the body, the mind, and the world all move to their own unpredictable tempos. The uncanny hour is an invitation to notice how little is truly certain, how easily the illusion of order slips. If you find yourself caught in the uncanny hour tonight, don't rush to fill the gap. Let the silence stretch, the glitch remain. The world will resume its rhythm, the clocks will catch up, but for a moment you are free from the tyranny of measurement. The uncanny hour is not a problem to solve, but an experience to witness. In that pause, the world feels less rigid, and you feel, briefly, quietly, more alive. The uncanny hour, clocks and glitches, reminds you that time is not absolute. The rules bend. The world is stranger, softer,
more unstable than you want to believe. And in that softness, for just a moment, you glimpse a freedom not measured in hours.
Time dilation in everyday life. You stare at the clock and 5 minutes refuse to pass. Another day, you blink and it's already evening. Time dilation in everyday life is a paradox you live with but rarely examine. It's not just a trick of boredom or excitement, it's the mind's inability to measure the moment as it unfolds. Some hours are endless, some days vanish. Time moves differently depending on where you are, who you're with, how you feel. You try to hold on to it, but it slips and stretches, unpredictably elastic. Time dilation is rooted in psychology, but it's also physical. Science says that gravity, velocity, and even your body's chemistry shape how time is felt. The universe runs on one set of clocks, your nervous system on another. Pain slows time, pleasure speeds it up, uncertainty freezes it, fear fragments it. Childhood summers are endless, adult weeks a blur. Trauma locks you into a single, unyielding minute. Joy expands into hours that feel like seconds. Most people don't notice the mechanics of time dilation until something breaks routine. You travel. Time zones shatter the day. Jet lag warps the night. You wait for news. Seconds crawl. You lose yourself in work or in love. Hours disappear. You grieve. A day becomes a year. The mind cannot reconcile the numbers with the feeling. Memory refuses to file time in a straight line. The cost of time dilation is subtle frustration, sometimes longing. You wish for more of the fast days, less of the slow ones. You try to predict or control the flow, to schedule joy, to manage pain by speeding through it or slowing down. But time resists. The more you focus on the clock, the slower it moves. The more you surrender, the faster it passes. Psychologically, time dilation reveals your mind's obsession with measurement. You want to count every moment, but meaning is not found in the numbers. The richest hours are often those you forget to count, while the worst are those you feel every second of. The mind's grip on time is always uncertain, never quite enough, never quite right. If you find yourself caught in the experience of time dilation tonight, notice the moment as it bends. Try not to judge the pace. The slow times will end, the fast ones will return. Time is not your enemy or your servant. It is simply the space in which you live, stretch, and change. The dilation will not last, but neither will any moment you wish to keep. Time dilation in everyday life is not a flaw, but a feature. It is how you feel, remember, and grow. Each distorted hour is a window into your own psychology, a reminder that life's true length is not measured by clocks, but by experience. Time bends. You bend with it, and in that bending, you find the shape of your days.
The pause button illusion. You dream of hitting pause, a secret switch to stop the world, to freeze reality for a moment so you can catch up, breathe, prepare, escape. The pause button illusion is seductive. It whispers of control and rest in a life that rarely slows. You imagine the power to step outside the rush, to halt time while you gather your thoughts, or hold on to something that is slipping away. But the pause button illusion is just that, an illusion. Time never actually stops. The world keeps spinning, clocks keep ticking, and even in stillness, your heart keeps time. You try to create pauses in your life, a long bath, a vacation, a breath between sentences,
but the current of time always returns. The world never waits. Your attempts to pause only highlight how little control you really have. The mind craves a break, especially when life is chaotic or overwhelming. You fantasize about escaping deadlines, freezing a perfect moment, suspending heartbreak, or postponing a hard decision. You wish you could push pause on a conversation that's unraveling, on a relationship that's ending, on an age you're not ready to leave behind. But even when you retreat, the world advances. Problems accumulate, choices expire, opportunities pass by unseen. Most people build routines and rituals in search of the pause button illusion. You binge watch, scroll endlessly, numb out with food, drink, or distraction, hoping to slow the onslaught of responsibility. These manufactured pauses don't stop time. They only steal it, trading one kind of movement for another. When you unpause, reality rushes in, often harsher for being ignored. The cost of the pause button illusion is subtle disconnection from the flow of your own life. You start to measure time by what you can avoid rather than what you can experience. You may grow restless in silence, unable to enjoy stillness that isn't absolute. When life finally pauses, a loss, a crisis, a sudden absence, you are unprepared for the emptiness that follows. You realize that pausing is not the same as living, and that freezing the moment cannot preserve what you love. Psychologically, the illusion is fueled by anxiety and regret. You want time to slow down when things are good, to halt when things are bad, to rewind when you've made a mistake. But the only time you truly have is what you're living now. The pause button, if it exists, is only ever metaphorical, a practice of presence, of noticing the detail in each breath, each sound, each fleeting moment. If you find yourself longing for the pause button illusion tonight, notice what you are running from. Is it fatigue, fear, loss, or simply the pace of living? Instead of pausing life, try pausing your own rush through it. Notice your thoughts, the texture of the present, the edges of your longing. The illusion will pass, and time will carry you forward, but for a moment you can meet it, not as an enemy, but as a current you can float within, even if only briefly. The pause button illusion is not a weakness, but a wish for relief. The world will never pause for you, but you can slow your own movement within it. Rest is not a break from life, it is a part of it. When you accept that there is no real pause, you can finally let go of the illusion and enter the moment as it is, unfinished and unstoppable.
When seconds stretch forever, you wait for news, for pain to end, for sleep to come. The clock's hand seems frozen, a minute refusing to turn, a second that lingers so long it breaks your sense of reality. When seconds stretch forever, time becomes a tormentor, a space where you are trapped with your fear, boredom, or hope, unable to escape or rush ahead. The experience is deeply psychological. The mind measures time not by clocks, but by emotion. Fear, anticipation, pain, loneliness, all make moments feel endless. A child's wait for a birthday, a patient's wait for relief, a lover's wait for a call. Each second expands, filled with longing, dread, or uncertainty. The present swells until it is all you can feel, the past and future disappearing in the ache of waiting. Most people know this sensation intimately. You sit in a hospital, the seconds crawling while you listen for footsteps or a phone's ring. You stare at the ceiling,
sleep refusing to come. You count breaths, count tiles, count heartbeats, convinced time is playing a trick. Even in pleasure, seconds can stretch. Moments of awe, of fear, of falling, where time seems to dilate, each detail magnified. The cost of living in seconds that stretch forever is a kind of suffering. The longer the wait, the more your mind spirals, imagining every possibility, fearing the worst, replaying regrets. You become hyper-aware, searching for distraction or escape, but nothing works. Time refuses to move, trapping you in a loop of feeling and thought that only breaks when the outside world changes. Psychologically, the stretching of seconds is a defense mechanism. The mind slows down when it senses danger or importance, giving you time to process, to prepare. But when the wait is out of your control, the mechanism backfires, amplifying discomfort. The harder you focus on the passage of time, the slower it seems to move. If you find yourself trapped in a moment when seconds stretch forever tonight, notice the urge to flee. Try instead to inhabit the stretch. Feel each breath, each sensation, without judgment. The second will eventually pass, even if you cannot see it. The world will change, the phone will ring, the dawn will come. The stretching is only temporary, even when it feels endless. When seconds stretch forever, you are forced to meet yourself, stripped of distraction. This meeting is uncomfortable, but it is also a reminder of your own resilience. You have survived every endless second so far. You will survive this one too. Time will begin to move again in its own way, and you will move with it.
The arrow of time, or a circle. You are taught to see time as an arrow, straight, unstoppable, always pointing from birth to death, from beginning to end. This is the comfort of story, the illusion of progress, the reassurance that you are moving forward. But sometimes the arrow bends. Events repeat, history returns, memories loop. You wonder if time is really a line, or if it is a circle, closed, recursive, returning always to where it began. The arrow of time, or a circle. The question is both philosophical and visceral. You notice it in déjà vu, in generational patterns, in the rhythm of seasons and rituals. You work, rest, lose, love, and the cycle resets. The mind clings to the promise of the future, but the evidence of the past is everywhere. You find yourself wondering if you are progressing or simply turning, endlessly within the boundaries of your own experience. Most people prefer the comfort of the arrow. It promises escape, evolution, redemption. But when the circle asserts itself, you feel trapped, fated, powerless to change. You see the same mistakes play out in different forms, the same arguments in new voices, the same disappointments reappearing just when you thought they were gone. Time's arrow feels like hope. Time's circle, inevitability. The cost of this tension is confusion, sometimes despair. If you are only repeating, what is the point of effort or choice? If the end is always the beginning, does anything matter? The mind rebels against the idea of the circle, but the body recognizes its truth. In sleep and waking, in breath and hunger,
in the rituals you perform without thinking. Psychologically, the arrow and the circle are both true. You grow and change, but you also loop and return. Life is progress and repetition, movement and recurrence. The arrow gives you goals. The circle gives you meaning. One without the other is incomplete, a story without closure, or a cycle without growth. If you find yourself lost between the arrow of time or a circle tonight, pause. Notice where you are, moving forward or returning to the familiar. Accept that both are real, both are necessary. Your story is not a simple line, nor a perfect loop. It is a spiral, always returning, but never quite the same. In that spiral, you find the freedom to move, to return, to begin again. The arrow of time or a circle. You do not have to choose. You live both every day. A movement through the years and a dance with the moments that come back again and again, reshaped by your living.
Reliving mistakes, literally. You wake in the middle of the night, replaying a moment you wish you could erase. A word you shouldn't have said, a step you should have avoided, a door you wish you had left closed. You tell yourself it's just memory, just regret, but the experience is more physical, more immersive. The scene unfolds in exact detail, colors, sounds, the prickling sense of embarrassment or dread. You are not just remembering your mistake, you are reliving it, literally, as if time itself has rewound. Reliving mistakes, literally, is more than guilt or reflection. It's a psychological trap, a glitch in your mind's processing of failure and pain. Your brain doesn't distinguish well between memory and experience. Each time you revisit the mistake, you trigger the same chemical responses, the same rush of shame, the same spike in adrenaline, the same silent, urgent plea for a different outcome. The body tenses, the mind spirals. The past becomes the present, if only for a moment. Most people believe that reflection is helpful, that by reliving mistakes you learn and grow. But the repetition often serves another purpose, punishment, not progress. You become caught in a loop, unable to forgive, unable to let go, rehearsing your failure in the hope that somehow the pain will atone for the error. The mind is relentless, searching for the missing piece, the alternative decision, the path not taken. The cost of reliving mistakes, literally, is exhaustion. You expend energy on what cannot be changed, pouring presence and attention into wounds that will not heal through repetition. The past invades the present, crowding out new experience, poisoning future decisions. You hesitate, afraid to repeat yourself, or you become numb, resigned to the inevitability of failure. Psychologically, this pattern is self-protection gone awry. The mind is trying to prevent future harm, to embed the lesson so deeply that you will never make the same mistake again. But the lesson is drowned out by the noise of self-recrimination. Instead of insight, you are left with anxiety, a chronic sense of inadequacy. You shrink from risk, convinced that one mistake will mean another lifetime of reliving. Some people seek escape in distraction, drowning the replay in work, in noise, in substance or sleep. Others seek redemption by apologizing endlessly, trying to rewrite the story after the fact. But the past, once lived, can only be accepted, never undone. Forgiveness, of yourself especially,
is the only way to disrupt the loop. If you find yourself reliving mistakes, literally, tonight, pause. Notice the pattern. Accept that your mind is trying to protect you, but that pain is not the same as learning. The mistake has already been lived. You do not have to relive it again. Take a breath. Feel the sensation. Let it pass. Remind yourself that you are not your worst moment, that you can move forward, even with the memory still echoing. Reliving mistakes, literally, is a part of being human, but you can soften the loop. With each act of acceptance, each moment of self-compassion, the replay loses power. The past will always be there, but it does not have to be present. The future can be built from new choices, not just old regrets.
Life's copy-paste syndrome. You notice yourself doing the same thing day after day with only minor variations. Drinking the same coffee, saying the same words, facing the same frustrations. Sometimes it's comforting, a sense of order in chaos. Other times it's suffocating, as if your life has fallen victim to a glitch in the code. Life's copy-paste syndrome is subtle. It doesn't announce itself with drama, but with repetition so smooth it becomes invisible. Life's copy-paste syndrome is psychological. The mind loves efficiency. Once it finds a pattern that works, or at least doesn't fail catastrophically, it clings to it, repeating actions, thoughts, even emotions. You don't just repeat routines, you repeat arguments, apologies, hopes, and doubts. Days blur into one another, the edges softened by sameness. Even your most intense experiences can become templates for what comes next. Most people don't notice the syndrome until they try to break it. You travel, move, fall in love, change jobs, but soon the new is absorbed into the old. Habits reform, relationships settle into familiar grooves, even ambitions start to recycle themselves. You tell yourself you're changing, but the deeper rhythm stays the same, a pattern so ingrained it feels like personality. The cost of life's copy-paste syndrome is the loss of novelty, a dullness that creeps in when the mind is starved for change. You stop noticing details, stop questioning your assumptions, stop reaching for surprise. The day feels shorter, the self smaller. You risk mistaking comfort for meaning, routine for purpose. Life shrinks to the size of your habits. Psychologically, this syndrome is a form of risk management. The mind prefers the known, even if it's unfulfilling, to the anxiety of uncertainty. Every new behavior requires effort. Every break from the pattern feels dangerous, even if it's only uncomfortable. The more you copy-paste, the safer you feel, but also, perhaps, the more restless. The copy-paste syndrome is reinforced by culture and technology. Social media repeats the same jokes, news cycles, controversies. Work is optimized into routines. Relationships reduced to predictable scripts. Even leisure becomes ritualized, binging the same series, eating at the same places, seeking novelty in pre-approved forms. If you find yourself caught in life's copy-paste syndrome tonight, don't rush to break the pattern. Instead, notice it. Name it. Ask, what is being protected and what is being sacrificed? Novelty isn't always the answer, but awareness is the first step to change. Try a small shift, a new route, a new word, a new thought. The world will not end, but your sense of it might expand. Life's copy-paste syndrome is not a failure, but a side effect of adaptation. You are allowed to rewrite your template. Each act of curiosity, each risk of change, each moment of presence chips away at the sameness. The days may repeat, but you don't have to. The mind can be taught to seek difference, even if it's only a single detail in an otherwise familiar world.
Why your brain loves patterns. You find faces in clouds, rhythms in chaos, meaning in coincidence. The mind seeks out patterns everywhere, constructing order, making predictions, building stories out of fragments. Why your brain loves patterns is not a mystery. It is the foundation of perception, the architecture of survival. But it is also a source of limitation, a double-edged tool that shapes your reality as much as it reveals it. The brain's love of patterns begins in biology. Pattern recognition is efficient, a way to predict danger, recognize friends, remember food sources, and avoid mistakes. You are rewarded for spotting regularities, punished for missing them. This machinery is powerful. It lets you learn language, navigate social life, interpret body language, but it also fills the world with illusions, false positives, conspiracy theories, paranoia, and superstition. Most people are unaware of the extent to which their life is shaped by patterns. You follow habits without thinking, judge strangers by the familiar, repeat emotional reactions because the mind has labeled them safe or normal. You are drawn to people who echo your past, chase goals that fit your narrative, avoid situations that don't match your pattern. The mind calls this wisdom, but sometimes it's just inertia. The cost of the brain's love for patterns is missed novelty and misunderstood difference. You may dismiss the unfamiliar as dangerous, label the unknown as impossible. Creativity suffers, curiosity narrows, relationships become predictable scripts. You stop seeing the world as it is and begin to see only what fits your expectation. Psychologically, pattern seeking is comforting, even when the pattern is unpleasant. Certainty soothes anxiety. The mind prefers the misery it can explain to the possibility it cannot. This is why breaking patterns feels risky, why change is so difficult, and why you may return to harmful routines because at some level the brain finds order in them. Culturally, the brain's love for patterns is exploited everywhere. Advertising, design, storytelling. Stories repeat themes for a reason. Brands rely on familiar cues. Even rebellion is packaged in recognizable forms. The unfamiliar is always a harder sell because it requires the brain to work without its favored shortcuts. If you find yourself locked into a pattern tonight, ask whether it serves you. Notice when your reaction is reflex, not choice. Try seeing a situation as if it were brand new, free of the mind's template. The brain will resist. Patterns are efficient, after all, but the world is bigger than your predictions. Why your brain loves patterns is simple. Patterns keep you safe, make you smart, help you belong. But you are more than your brain. You can choose to disrupt, to unlearn, to see with fresh eyes. Each time you step outside the pattern, even for a moment, you invite possibility back into your life. The mind will always return to order, but you are free to wander, even briefly, beyond its borders.
Sleep, wake, repeat. The daily loop. You wake to the same alarm, groggy or restless. You slip into your morning habits, coffee, shower, the familiar rhythm of preparation. The day unfolds much like the one before, the same commute, the same tasks, the same faces. Evening arrives, and you retreat, perhaps to the same screen, the same book, the same chair. You fall asleep, only to start again. Sleep, wake, repeat. The daily loop. This loop is not just routine, it is the architecture of your life. The mind craves structure, so it builds a cage of familiarity. You mark time not by events, but by cycles. Monday bleeding into Friday, weeks melting into months, years vanishing into the fog of repetition. Each day is shaped by what came before, each night a reset button you never quite notice pressing. Most people drift through the daily loop without reflection. There is comfort in the known. Unpredictability is exhausting. The brain, always looking to conserve energy, automates as much as it can. You move through chores and conversations half-aware, trusting muscle memory and habit to carry you. Days blur together, details slip away, and soon you're left with the sensation that you have lived the same day dozens, even hundreds of times. The cost of the daily loop is subtle, but real. Time seems to accelerate. The more you repeat, the less you remember. You lose the edges of your experiences, the surprises, the sense of progress. Life becomes background noise. You may notice it only in moments of crisis or change, an accident, a loss, a sudden burst of laughter that breaks the trance. Otherwise, you exist in the gentle hum of repetition, rarely awake to your own living. Psychologically, sleep, wake, repeat, the daily loop is both safety and prison. Structure shields you from chaos, but also narrows your sense of possibility. The mind learns to equate routine with control, to fear the disruption that newness brings. This is why change, even positive change, can feel like a threat. You prefer the discomfort you know to the risk you don't. If you find yourself caught in the daily loop tonight, don't rush to break it. Instead, notice its texture. See how much of your day is lived in reflex, how often you reach for your phone or cup or remote without thinking. Ask what you are truly craving: rest, novelty, connection, or simply relief from the grind. The answer will not dissolve the loop, but it will make you conscious within it. Sleep, wake, repeat. The daily loop is not failure or flaw. It is the mind's answer to uncertainty, the body's way of surviving. You are allowed to rest in the loop, to let yourself be carried by routine. But every so often, open your eyes in the middle of the repetition. Notice the morning light, the taste of your coffee, the feel of your skin against the sheets. Even a single conscious moment breaks the spell. The loop continues, but you are no longer sleepwalking through it.
Escaping the routine spiral, you want to break free, to do something new, to disrupt the cycle that has closed around you like a spiral staircase. But the more you try, the more your efforts circle back to the beginning. Escaping the routine spiral is not just about novelty. It's about challenging the gravitational pull of your own habits, confronting the fear that nothing will ever really change. The routine spiral is subtle, a pattern built from small, repeated actions, each reinforcing the next. You decide to exercise, only to slip back into old patterns. You try a new hobby, but routine quickly absorbs it. Even your attempts at rebellion become ritualized. Friday nights out, annual vacations, self-improvement binges that always end in familiar disappointment. The spiral narrows as you age, until you feel you are moving, but never progressing. Most people are not aware of the routine spiral until frustration or crisis forces recognition. You may call it boredom, burnout, or midlife malaise. You sense that life is moving in circles, not lines. Each solution becomes another repetition, each escape route a detour that leads back home. You begin to wonder if change is possible at all, or if freedom is just another illusion. The cost of the routine spiral is subtle despair, a quiet resignation to the shape of your days.
You shrink your ambitions, lower your expectations, grow wary of hope. The mind, always seeking efficiency, convinces you that comfort is the same as contentment. You give up risk, and with it, much of what makes life vivid. Psychologically, escaping the routine spiral requires more than willpower. It demands self-awareness, a willingness to feel uncomfortable, and the patience to tolerate failure. Habits are not broken in a day. The mind resists change fiercely, clinging to the familiar. True escape comes not from dramatic acts, but from small disruptions, trying a new path, asking a different question, risking embarrassment or boredom. The world often conspires to keep you in the spiral. Culture rewards routine, celebrates consistency, and punishes deviation. You are taught to value stability, to equate unpredictability with danger. But too much sameness breeds numbness, a slow fading of joy and meaning. If you find yourself trapped in the routine spiral tonight, try this. Don't attempt to shatter the pattern. Instead, introduce a single anomaly, a different route home, a new recipe, a conversation with a stranger. Notice how the mind resists, how quickly it tries to reestablish order. The discomfort is the sign that you are alive, not just repeating. Escaping the routine spiral is not about revolution, but evolution. Each small break in the pattern widens the spiral, opens the door to possibility. You may never escape entirely, but you can learn to navigate the spiral with curiosity, not resignation. The world will still pull you back to routine, but now you know that escape is always possible, one new act at a time.
Rituals that bend time. You light a candle, repeat a prayer, circle a date on the calendar. You gather with others to mark the turning of a season, the memory of a loss, the hope of a new beginning. Rituals that bend time are woven through your life, not as superstition, but as anchors, as doors into moments when the ordinary flow of hours is suspended and something else enters. A ritual is not just repetition, it is intention layered on routine, the creation of sacred space in an otherwise indifferent world. In ritual, time dilates. A wedding, a funeral, a birthday, even the act of making tea or walking a familiar path, each becomes more than a tick of the clock. In ritual, you step outside the daily loop and enter a zone where meaning is thickened, where the past, present, and future merge. Most people perform rituals without conscious thought. You celebrate holidays, observe anniversaries, keep family traditions, perform small personal ceremonies before sleep or after waking. The effect is always the same. Reality slows, attention sharpens, time itself seems to bend around the act. The power of rituals that bend time is psychological. The mind, always seeking order, uses ritual to mark transitions, to soothe anxiety, to create continuity in the face of chaos. You cannot stop the passage of time, but you can shape its meaning. Rituals offer the illusion of control, but also genuine comfort. They allow you to grieve, to hope, to remember, to begin again. The cost, if any, is the risk of stagnation, when ritual becomes empty, mere habit, stripped of intention. But even then, the shape of the act can evoke memory, connect you to others, remind you that time is not always linear. Through ritual, you return to moments that matter, even as the world rushes forward. If you find yourself yearning for rituals that bend time tonight, try creating one. It need not be elaborate.
Light a candle for someone gone. Write a letter you'll never send. Mark the turning of the moon or the closing of a chapter. Enter the act fully. Let time slow. Let the ordinary become significant. Rituals that bend time are not magic, but they are a kind of technology, a way of shaping experience, honoring feeling, making time visible. In ritual, you meet yourself and the world at once, unbound by clocks. Time resumes. The loop continues. But something has changed. You have marked the moment. You have bent time, if only for an instant.
Time blindness and lost hours. You glance at the clock, and the day has slipped away. Tasks unfinished, plans forgotten, moments vanished into a haze. You can't account for where the hours went, just that they did. This is time blindness and lost hours, a subtle fracture in the sense of continuity. You experience life in fragments, patches of memory, flashes of awareness, but the seamless flow you expect is missing. Time blindness is not just distraction, it is a cognitive drift, the mind losing its grip on duration. The hours melt, run together, evaporate in the heat of routine or anxiety. You might call it spacing out, but the experience is deeper, an inability to track time's passage, to estimate what's left, or to hold on to the sense of now. Entire afternoons disappear while you scroll, daydream, or work with blank intensity. You blink and find that dinner is over, the sun has set, another week has passed. The lost hours pile up, but never announce their absence. Most people encounter time blindness and lost hours more often than they realize. The world is structured to divide time, calendars, alarms, deadlines. But your mind is not a clock. You float between tasks, absorbed or bored, attention drifting in and out of focus. Time escapes in these gaps, and you are left with only traces, half-finished projects, unanswered messages, questions about what happened and when. The cost is subtle but cumulative. Life feels thin, unanchored, a series of flashes rather than a story. You lose confidence in your memory, grow anxious about missed opportunities, find yourself apologizing for lateness or absence you cannot fully explain. The sense of control over your days erodes, replaced by the vague fear that you are missing out on your own life. Psychologically, time blindness is tied to how the brain manages attention, emotion, and novelty. When bored or overwhelmed, the mind stops recording detail, treating hours as disposable. Stress speeds up the clock, while pleasure or flow can make time vanish altogether. For some, time blindness is an occasional annoyance. For others, especially those with ADHD or trauma, it becomes a constant, shaping identity and expectation. Technology amplifies the effect. Notifications, infinite scroll, and algorithmic feeds fragment awareness, breaking time into micro-moments. You are always moving but rarely present. Lost hours accumulate in digital fog, irretrievable except as a vague sense of emptiness or fatigue. If you find yourself caught in time blindness and lost hours tonight, pause. Ask what the lost time was filled with, what feeling, what task, what absence. The solution is not always to schedule more tightly, but to re-enter the moment, however briefly. Name the sensation, ground yourself in a detail, reclaim a single minute. The hours may still vanish, but you can mark your place within them.
Time blindness and lost hours are not flaws, but byproducts of a mind struggling to keep pace with the world. You will never catch every moment, but you can build rituals, reminders, anchors that draw you back. Notice the sun's position, the temperature of your coffee, the sound of your breath. Small acts of presence stitch the hours together, making the day feel lived, not lost.
Future discounting, why we ignore tomorrow. You know what you should do? Save money, eat better, call a friend, finish the project. But today's comforts, distractions, and desires always seem more urgent. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, next week, someday when it's easier. This is future discounting, why we ignore tomorrow, trading the promise of the future for the certainty of now. Future discounting is a psychological bias, a miscalculation wired into your decision-making. The mind values immediate reward over delayed benefit, shrinking the importance of what's distant in time. The further away a reward or consequence, the less it seems to matter. You spend impulsively, procrastinate, skip preventive care, sabotage your own goals, not out of ignorance, but out of a persistent, invisible bias toward the present. Most people experience future discounting daily. The pattern is subtle but relentless. You press snooze instead of waking, indulge in another episode instead of sleeping, promise to exercise but never start. Even when you plan for the future, the mind secretly discounts it. Retirement, health, deep relationships, all are sacrificed on the altar of what feels urgent right now. The cost of future discounting is invisible at first. Choices pile up quietly, and their consequences arrive suddenly. A crisis of health, a financial shortfall, a relationship left unattended. You are shocked by how quickly the future becomes the present, how little preparation you made for the inevitable. Regret follows, but rarely changes the pattern. The next decision, the next impulse feels just as pressing as the last. Psychologically, future discounting is linked to emotion and uncertainty. The brain is built for survival, wired to seize the opportunity at hand rather than trust a future it cannot see. Anxiety, stress, and fatigue magnify the effect, narrowing your focus to the most immediate relief. The risk of loss or discomfort tomorrow is abstract, while the pleasure of now is concrete. Culture amplifies the bias. Advertising, social media, and modern convenience encourage you to satisfy every whim instantly. Waiting is seen as a weakness, patience as old-fashioned. You are taught to maximize efficiency, but not to plan for sustainability. Even self-improvement can become another form of immediate gratification, seeking quick fixes instead of long-term change. If you find yourself trapped by future discounting tonight, notice the feeling. Ask what is so intolerable about now that you are willing to mortgage tomorrow for relief. The solution is rarely grand. Small acts of foresight, preparing lunch for the next day, setting out your clothes, saving a single dollar, begin to shift the balance. The mind resists, always seeking shortcuts, but each act of patience plants a seed for a future self. Future discounting, why we ignore tomorrow, is not a character flaw, but an ancient adaptation out of place in a world of endless options. You can train your mind to value the future, but it requires intention and ritual. Visualize the life you want. Feel the consequences in your body. Reward yourself for patience. With practice, tomorrow becomes real again, and you remember that every future begins with a present choice.
Phantom memories of other lives. You catch a fragment of a story that feels like your own, You dream in detail about a city you've never seen, feel nostalgia for a time you know you never lived, or sense an old grief that has no source in your actual past. These are phantom memories of other lives, psychological ghosts, echoes from somewhere outside the boundaries of your biography. Phantom memories are both unsettling and strangely comforting. They arrive unbidden, triggered by a smell, a song, a particular angle of sunlight. You might walk into a house and know the layout before you explore, or meet a stranger and sense the weight of shared history that can't be traced. Sometimes a single flash of imagery, a war, a journey, a love, fades as quickly as it comes, leaving only the impression that you are more than the sum of your days. Most people encounter phantom memories at least once. For some, they are fleeting and easily dismissed, a quirk of the imagination, a side effect of fiction or dreams. For others, they are persistent, shaping identity and emotion, lingering as the background hum of longing or recognition. You wonder if you are borrowing from books, from films, from the stories of others, or if perhaps you are brushing against something deeper: reincarnation, ancestral memory, the collective unconscious. Psychologically, phantom memories are a side effect of how the brain processes and stores information. Memory is not a fixed record, but a reconstruction, constantly updated by emotion, context, and suggestion. The mind weaves fragments from dreams, stories, overheard conversations, and forgotten details into a tapestry that can feel real. The self becomes porous, blending its own history with everything it has absorbed. The cost of phantom memories of other lives is confusion, a sense that you don't fully belong to your own story. You may feel haunted by longing, by homesickness for a place that doesn't exist, by grief for a life never lived. Or you may find comfort in the sensation that you are larger than your present self, connected to something wider and older than this single thread of experience. Culture provides many explanations. Some see these memories as evidence of past lives, soul connections, spiritual inheritance. Others view them as creative imagination or emotional residue. Science leans toward the mechanics of the mind, confabulation, false memory, the powerful blending of fact and fantasy. But no explanation erases the sensation itself, the moment when you recognize something you've never known. If you find yourself visited by phantom memories of other lives tonight, allow them to exist. Don't rush to assign meaning or dismiss them as nonsense. Notice what feeling they bring, what question they ask, what door they open in your sense of self. Sometimes the memory is just a longing for escape, for possibility, for a world beyond the limits of your own biography. Phantom memories of other lives are not proof of anything, but they are evidence of the mind's boundless reach. You carry fragments of everything you've seen, read, felt, and dreamed. Your story is always larger than you can contain, shaped by echoes and shadows you may never trace. Let the phantom memory linger, if only as a reminder that you are always more than your past.
The Mandela effect, glitches in reality. You remember something with absolute certainty. A phrase in a book, the color of a famous logo, the way a movie ended, the details of a public event. Then you discover that your memory doesn't match reality. Not just you. Others remember it your way, too. But the evidence is gone. This is the Mandela effect. Glitches in reality. A mass memory that never happened, or happened differently, leaving you to question the reliability of your senses, your mind, and perhaps the very fabric of the world. The Mandela effect is named for a strange phenomenon. Thousands of people remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, even though he lived for decades afterward. It's not a simple mistake, it's a conviction, a collective certainty that reality has shifted beneath your feet. You feel it in details. Was it Berenstain or Berenstein Bears? Febreze or Febreze? Luke, I am your father, or something else entirely. Each example is minor, but together they create unease. Most people shrug off such glitches in reality as quirks of memory, but the experience is deeper. You are forced to confront the fallibility of your mind, the ease with which entire groups can share the same false memory. The Mandela effect reveals that reality is not as solid as it appears. You are not just misremembering, you are participating in a collective hallucination, a slip in the timeline that leaves you unmoored. Psychologically, the Mandela effect is rooted in how memory works: fragile, reconstructive, easily influenced by suggestion, emotion, and the narratives of others. Your brain fills in gaps, creates patterns, smooths inconsistencies to protect your sense of order. Once an error is embedded, it spreads and solidifies, reinforced by repetition and social validation. You become convinced not just by your own recollection, but by the echo of the group. The cost of the Mandela effect, glitches in reality, is subtle distrust. You question what else you have misremembered, what other details might be false. You wonder how much of your life is built on fiction. You start to notice other slips, wrong lyrics, mistaken dates, memories that refuse to match photographs or family stories. The solid ground of the past begins to feel soft, shifting beneath your feet. Some people embrace the idea that the Mandela effect points to something larger, a glitch in the simulation, alternate timelines bleeding together, parallel worlds overlapping in small, persistent ways. Others insist on rational explanations, false memory, the brain's tendency to generalize and substitute, the social contagion of error. The truth does little to settle the sense of unease. If you find yourself caught by the Mandela effect, glitches in reality tonight, don't rush to dismiss or explain it. Let the uncertainty linger. Notice how attached you are to the details of your own story, how easily you defend your memories, even when the evidence disagrees. The glitch is a reminder. Reality is co-authored by perception, shaped as much by what you expect as by what you observe. The Mandela effect is not just a curiosity, it's a crack in the armor of certainty, a subtle reminder that the mind is a filter, not a mirror. Each glitch asks you to hold reality with lighter hands, to question what you know, to accept that some things may never be as stable as you want them to be. The world remains, but your faith in its details is quietly, permanently altered.
When dreams predict reality. You wake from a dream, the details vivid but strange, impossible to forget. Days or weeks later, the scene unfolds in waking life, a conversation, a place, a moment you feel you have already lived. The experience is disorienting. You search for rational explanations, coincidence, wishful thinking, a trick of the mind, but the feeling persists. When dreams predict reality, the boundaries between imagination and experience begin to blur. Most people encounter this phenomenon at least once. Sometimes the dream is mundane, a small event that later plays out as déjà vu. Other times, the dream is charged with emotion, a warning, a reunion, a loss that later appears in life with uncanny accuracy. You may dismiss the connection, but the memory remains. You are left wondering if the dream was a message, a glimpse of the future, or simply a side effect of the mind's relentless search for patterns. Psychologically, when dreams predict reality, it is a confrontation with the mystery of time. Dreams are not random. They are woven from fragments of memory, emotion, and unconscious processing. The mind rehearses scenarios, solves problems, and sometimes stumbles upon something that resembles what is yet to come. The rational explanation is probability. Out of thousands of dreams, some will align with real events purely by chance. But the sensation is always more powerful than statistics. The cost of believing in dreams that predict reality is a subtle loosening of trust in the ordinary world. You may begin to watch your dreams for signs, to read the future in symbols, to worry that nightmares will come true. You may give power to hope or fear based not on evidence, but on the memory of a dream that once came to pass. Culturally, stories of prophetic dreams are ancient and persistent. Myths, religions, and family legends are full of visions and omens. Some treat the phenomenon as mystical, a connection to the unconscious or to realms beyond time. Others dismiss it as confirmation bias, the mind's tendency to notice hits and ignore misses. If you find yourself haunted by a dream that seems to predict reality tonight, pause. Ask whether the meaning comes from the dream itself or from your desire to find order in chaos. Let the uncertainty exist. Sometimes the dream is only a rehearsal, a way of making sense of what might come. Other times, it is a coincidence, a story you weave after the fact to give meaning to the unpredictable. When dreams predict reality, you're reminded of the mind's power and its limits. You are a creature of pattern, searching for prophecy in the randomness of sleep. The boundary between past and future, between what you imagine and what you live, is thinner than you think. Let the dream linger, but remember, the future is always uncertain, even when you think you've seen it before.
Split-second time travel. You catch a glimpse of yourself in a mirror, but for a moment, you don't recognize your own reflection. You walk into a room and are seized by the overwhelming sense that you have stepped outside your usual life, into another era, another version of yourself. It passes as quickly as it arrives. A shiver, a flash, a split-second sense of time travel. Split-second time travel is not a matter of machines or science fiction. It's a psychological event, a jolt of dislocation, a sensation that time is thinner, more pliable than you believe. You may be transported by a song, a scent, a phrase. Memory collapses the distance between past and present. The mind leaps without warning, and for a heartbeat,
You exist outside the arrow of time. Most people experience split-second time travel in moments of high emotion or sensory overload. The smell of a particular food launches you back to childhood. A forgotten photograph reanimates the past with uncanny clarity. In trauma, time fragments. The mind relives pain as if it is happening now. In joy, you may be swept away, returning to a happiness you thought you had lost. The effect is not always nostalgic or pleasant. Split-second time travel can also provoke anxiety, a sense of being untethered, unable to trust your place in the timeline. You question whether you were truly present or just moving through echoes of former selves. The boundaries of identity and memory blur, making you question what is real and what is residue from another time. The cost is a fleeting instability. You lose your grip on the narrative of your life, if only for a moment. You become acutely aware of the mind's power to rearrange the past, to bring it forward, to dissolve the walls that separate now from then. The sense of continuity, the story you rely on, is momentarily suspended. Psychologically, split-second time travel is a function of how the brain encodes and retrieves experience. Memory is not a file, but a network, triggered by context and emotion. The mind is built to make associations, to collapse distances when survival or meaning is at stake. Sometimes, the machinery misfires, or works too well, and you are flung through time without warning. If you find yourself swept up in split-second time travel tonight, let the sensation unfold. Don't rush to ground yourself. Don't push the past away. Notice what triggered the leap, what feeling or memory surged forward. The present will reclaim you soon enough. The experience is not a loss of sanity, but a reminder that time is not as rigid as it seems. Split-second time travel is a feature of consciousness, a fleeting power to slip the leash of the clock. Each moment is made up of 1,000 others. Each day contains echoes of every life you have lived. When the mind leaps, follow it, even if only for a breath. The past is never far away, and neither is the possibility of change. The loop of addiction. You reach for what you promised to avoid. You feel the urge, the tension, the quick relief, and then the slow regret. You promise yourself it will be different this time, but the cycle repeats. Urge, indulgence, consequence, resolve. This is the loop of addiction, a pattern as old as humanity, a structure more rigid than any prison. You want to stop, but every exit is a circle. The loop of addiction is not just about substance or vice. It is a psychological architecture. The mind and body learn together, reinforcing the cycle with each repetition. Dopamine surges at anticipation, not fulfillment. You chase the memory of relief, but the pleasure diminishes with every round. Each attempt to quit makes the next urge sharper, the next relapse more likely. You are trapped, not by weakness, but by a loop that feeds itself. Most people misunderstand the loop of addiction. Outsiders see it as a failure of willpower, a moral weakness, an inability to learn from pain. But inside the loop, there is only repetition, rationalization in the moment, shame afterwards, and then the desperate hope that next time will be different. The mind is expert at erasing consequences, blurring the pain until only the promise of relief remains.
The cost of the loop of addiction is measured in lost days, broken relationships, wasted potential. But the deeper cost is the erosion of trust in yourself, in the possibility of change. You stop believing your own promises, stop imagining a life outside the loop. Time collapses to a series of urges and consequences, each indistinguishable from the last. Psychologically, addiction hijacks the brain's reward circuitry. The mind rewires itself to seek the shortcut, to escape pain, to amplify desire. The loop deepens with stress, with isolation, with the sense that you are already lost. The urge is never just about pleasure. It is about numbing, forgetting, escaping the pressure of living. Over time, even the relief disappears, replaced only by the need to repeat. Culture alternates between moralizing and enabling. You are sold endless solutions, all promising a shortcut out of the loop. But the pattern endures because it is deeper than behavior. It is a structure of memory, emotion, physiology. Breaking free is less about strength than about changing the architecture, building new loops to compete with the old. If you find yourself caught in the loop of addiction tonight, notice the pattern without judgment. Name each part: the urge, the story you tell, the moment of choice, the aftermath. Awareness is not a cure, but it is the beginning of change. Small acts of resistance, waiting 10 minutes, calling someone, disrupting the ritual, begin to wear grooves into the old pattern. The loop of addiction is not a sentence. Every pattern can be broken, though never all at once. With each pause, each act of honesty, each moment of discomfort endured, you loosen the loop's hold. Recovery is not a straight line, but a spiral. Old patterns revisited, but not repeated forever. The future remains unwritten, even when the loop feels endless.
Are we stuck in a simulation? You question reality in quiet moments, when the world glitches, when coincidence piles on coincidence, when a detail in the fabric of the ordinary feels off. You wonder if the rules are too neat, the odds too strange, the world too polished in its cruelty and beauty. Are we stuck in a simulation? It is a question that arrives like a cold draft, unsettling and impossible to shake. The simulation hypothesis is both a modern anxiety and an ancient suspicion. Philosophers once wondered if life was only a dream, a shadow play, an illusion generated by something greater. Now technology provides a metaphor, the idea that consciousness is a program, experience a sequence of code, reality itself a rendered environment run by unknown players or systems. Science fiction becomes existential suspicion. Most people feel the simulation question at the edges. Moments of déjà vu, dreams that bleed into waking, improbable synchronicities, the persistent sense that you are being watched, evaluated, tested. You notice patterns in randomness, algorithms behind the news, echoes of yourself in strangers' stories. Sometimes it is comforting. If the world is a simulation, maybe suffering can be explained. Maybe the rules can be hacked. Maybe death is not the end. More often, it is quietly terrifying. If reality is an illusion, what meaning can be trusted? What choices are real? Who is watching? The cost of believing you are stuck in a simulation is a kind of alienation. You may withdraw from the present, doubting the solidity of experience. Intimacy, beauty, grief all feel staged, as if for an audience or a test you can never quite pass. You become suspicious of happiness, numb to tragedy. caught in the limbo between skepticism and longing for something real. Culture amplifies the simulation question. Movies, games, virtual worlds all train the mind to accept unreality as normal. News feeds and algorithms mediate what you see, who you know, what you desire. The distance between real and virtual shrinks. You become used to layers, to interfaces, to the feeling that the world is curated, not created. If you find yourself haunted by the suspicion that you are stuck in a simulation tonight, sit with the uncertainty. Notice the rules you take for granted, the expectations you carry, the ways reality resists or rewards you. You may never have an answer, but you can choose your response, to treat the world as real enough to matter, or to let the suspicion drive you deeper into isolation. Are we stuck in a simulation? The question itself is a loop, a mirror in which you see both your doubt and your hope. Whether the world is code or clay, your experience is always personal, always fleeting, always uncertain. Meaning is not given, but made. Even if you are only a character in a story, you have the power to decide how you live it.
The 10-year echo. You think back to a decade ago, where you were, who you loved, what you feared, what you believed would last forever. Some details are blurry, others painfully sharp. You notice the echoes, the patterns that have survived, the wounds that have not healed, the lessons you are still learning, the mistakes you continue to make. This is the 10-year echo, a phenomenon where the past reverberates through the present, shaping decisions, emotions, and identity in ways both obvious and invisible. The 10-year echo is not nostalgia. It is not the simple longing for youth or the bittersweet memory of a lost opportunity. It is the persistent, low-frequency vibration of unfinished stories, unresolved conflicts, hopes deferred but never abandoned. You look at old photos and see a stranger who is still you. You find yourself reacting to current problems with the same habits, the same blind spots, the same language you used a decade ago. The world has changed, but some part of you is caught in an old feedback loop. Most people are unaware of the 10-year echo until it crashes through the present. A relationship that feels eerily similar, a challenge that resurrects an old insecurity, a joy that reminds you of something you thought you had lost. You hear your parents' voices in your own, find yourself chasing or avoiding dreams that belong to a younger self. The echo is not always painful. Sometimes it is a rescue, a reminder that you have survived worse, that you carry forward strengths you barely notice. The cost of the 10-year echo is ambivalence. You struggle to know whether you are moving forward or simply circling. Are you growing, or are you just reliving a pattern set long ago? The mind prefers to believe in progress, but the echo complicates the story. It blurs the boundary between past and present, erasing the illusion of clean slates and new beginnings. Psychologically, the 10-year echo is a byproduct of how memory and identity interact. The brain revisits old stories not to torment, but to make sense of the present. Unfinished business demands attention even if it is buried. Joy and pain seek expression, finding their way into current choices and relationships. The self is not a single story, but a collection of echoes, each one layered over the last. Culture encourages you to mark time in decades, reunions, anniversaries, retrospectives, but rarely prepares you for the reality that the past is never truly past. The echo is louder in moments of transition, when the distance between who you were and who you are
collapses. You sense both pride and regret, longing and relief. If you find yourself haunted by the 10-year echo tonight, listen. Notice what is returning, what remains unfinished, what lesson or longing refuses to fade. You cannot silence the echo, but you can learn from it. Let it guide you to the places where you are stuck, the places where you are growing, the places where you have healed. The 10-year echo is not a trap. It is the mind's way of weaving past into present, of reminding you that time is not a straight line. The future will carry its own echoes, shaped by what you choose today. You live within layers, not moments. The sound may fade, but it is never truly gone.
When childhood returns unexpectedly. You are walking down a street or sitting alone in a quiet room, and something shifts. A particular smell, a song on the radio, the feel of rain against your skin, and suddenly you are no longer the age you are. When childhood returns unexpectedly, it does not ask permission. It arrives as sensation, an old fear, a sudden longing, the sharp taste of hope you thought you'd outgrown. For a moment, you are both who you are and who you once were. The experience is not just memory, it is a bodily flashback, a collapsing of years. Your posture changes, your voice softens. You feel defenseless or invincible, or lost in a way you haven't in decades. The world looks different, as if seen through the eyes of someone much younger. You remember a toy, a hallway, a face that feels like home. The present recedes, and you are back inside a smaller body, a simpler confusion. Most people encounter the return of childhood by accident and are caught off guard by the intensity. You may find yourself crying over a trivial disappointment, laughing at a joke that only makes sense to an 8-year-old, or recoiling from a harmless word that long ago carried power. These returns are not nostalgia, they are ruptures, time loops in the mind's architecture. Childhood never truly vanishes. It hides in the corners, waiting for the right cue to reveal itself. The cost of when childhood returns unexpectedly is a loss of control. The adult self is briefly suspended. You might say things you don't mean, overreact to small problems, or chase old comforts with an urgency that surprises you. In relationships, you may become a child again, needy, defiant, hopeful, or ashamed. The people around you are bewildered by the regression. You may be bewildered yourself. Psychologically, the return of childhood is a feature of how the brain encodes experience. Deep emotions, fear, love, shame, are stored in layers, triggered by sensory detail or social cues. The child within is not gone, only hidden. When stress or safety open the gate, the old self walks forward. This can be a source of vulnerability or resilience, depending on how you respond. The world does not prepare you for these returns. You are expected to grow up, to live in the present, to outgrow the needs and wounds of childhood. But time is not a single thread. The past coexists with the present, shaping your actions, coloring your desires. Every adult carries a collection of younger selves, each with unfinished business, each waiting to be seen. If you find yourself caught when childhood returns unexpectedly tonight, do not rush to dismiss it. Let the feeling unfold. Notice which age you are, what longing or fear is resurfacing, what need is still unmet. The child is not your enemy. It is a part of your mind asking for attention, care, or closure. You can comfort, question,
or simply witness the return. You may find wisdom or pain or both. When childhood returns unexpectedly, it is not a failure of maturity. It is the mind's reminder that you are built from layers. Each one contains strengths and sorrows that never entirely fade. The past cannot be erased, but it can be integrated. In every return, there is a chance to make peace, to forgive, to remember who you have always been. Calendar days that haunt. You look at the date and your mood shifts. Maybe it's a birthday, an anniversary, the day someone left or someone arrived. Calendar days that haunt are more than memories. They are pressure points, ritual loops in the fabric of time. The year circles around, and suddenly the present is invaded by the weight of what happened before. Some days you dread without remembering why. Others you anticipate with dread, not hope. Calendar days that haunt are psychological landmines. The brain encodes important events with sensory and emotional tags, so the return of a date reactivates the old story. You find yourself restless on certain days, irritable or sad or nostalgic, and only later realize the connection. A scent, a shift in the light, a note on the calendar, and the ghosts return. You replay conversations, imagine alternate outcomes, wonder what would be different if the day had passed quietly. Most people experience haunted calendar days in silence. Society tells you to move on, to treat time as a forward motion. But time is a spiral, and these days are knots in the thread, places where the past is thick, the future unreachable. You might ignore the day, try to work through it, fill it with noise or activity, but the body remembers, the mind counts, the day arrives regardless of your readiness. The cost of calendar days that haunt is a loss of agency. The date seems to choose your mood, to dictate your thoughts. Anniversaries of trauma, breakups, deaths, or even unexplained sadness become recurring events. Each year, you are forced to reckon with what was lost, what was never resolved, what you cannot change. For some, even happy anniversaries can haunt. The pressure to feel joy, the awareness of time's passage. Psychologically, haunted days are reminders of unfinished business. The mind loops through what was said and unsaid, what was done and left undone. The day becomes a ritual, mourning, remembering, longing, sometimes hoping. You may reach out to old friends, visit old places, reenact the rituals of loss or celebration. The calendar becomes a map of your emotional life, not marked by appointments, but by echoes. If you find yourself gripped by calendar days that haunt tonight, let the day arrive. Notice the urge to run or to forget. Allow the memory to surface, the feeling to be named. Ritual can be a form of healing, a letter written, a candle lit, a moment of silence. The day will pass, and with it the sharpness of the memory. You do not have to live in the past, but you cannot always escape its anniversaries. Calendar days that haunt are not curses, but calls to attention. They remind you of who you have loved, what you have lost, what still matters. Each haunted day is a stitch in the fabric of your story, binding you to moments that refuse to fade. Time moves forward, but the heart circles back, again and again, to the days that shaped it.
Déjà rêvé, dreaming the future. You wake from a dream that feels unremarkable, mundane even, until one day you walk into the scene and realize you have been here before. The feeling is not quite déjà vu, not simply a trick of memory. It is déjà rêvé, dreaming the future. A subtle and unnerving sensation that you have lived the present twice, once in sleep and once awake. Déjà rêvé is quieter than prophecy, less theatrical than fate. The experience is rarely dramatic. You recognize a fragment, a face, a phrase, a turning of the head, the smell of a room.
You remember dreaming it, but cannot recall when. The memory hovers at the edge of awareness, a shadow over the ordinary. It is not enough to change your path, but enough to unsettle your sense of time. Most people dismiss déjà rêvé as coincidence, a side effect of a mind trained to spot patterns. But the experience lingers. You wonder if dreams are rehearsals, if your unconscious mind is mapping possibilities, running simulations in the night. You try to recall more details, to use the dream as a guide, but it resists analysis. The harder you look, the more it fades. Psychologically, déjà rêvé, dreaming the future, is a collision of memory, imagination, and prediction. The mind sorts and stores dreams with fragments of waking experience. When the fragments align, the sensation is powerful, a sense of having glimpsed what was to come, as if time is less linear than you thought. Science explains it as memory binding, but the feeling cannot be so easily dismissed. The cost is uncertainty. You become hyper-aware of your dreams, scanning them for meaning, for warnings, for glimpses of what is next. You may become anxious, waiting for the dream to arrive, or hopeful, treating dreams as signs or maps. The present loses its sharpness, blurred by the shadow of a possible future you cannot fully remember. Culture is filled with stories of dreaming the future. Prophets, visions, omens, legends of lives shaped by a dream's warning or promise. But for most, déjà rêvé is smaller, more personal, a whisper at the edge of consciousness. It raises questions you cannot answer. Does the future send messages? Is the mind capable of time travel and sleep? Or is it all a trick, a merging of chance and memory? If you find yourself caught in déjà rêvé, dreaming the future tonight, notice the sensation. Let the mystery be. The dream may be a rehearsal, a warning, or simply a side effect of consciousness seeking order. You do not have to act on it. Sometimes the mind reaches forward as easily as it reaches back, braiding time in ways you cannot see. Déjà rêvé is not proof of destiny, nor a guarantee of control. It is the mind's quiet rebellion against the straight line of time, a gentle folding, a reminder that your story is stitched together from dreams as much as from waking. The future remains uncertain, but sometimes, for a moment, you glimpse it before it arrives.
Looping conversations with strangers. You sit next to someone on a train or stand behind them in line, and the small talk begins. Names, places, weather, a brief complaint about the delay. The details change, but the rhythm is identical. A smile, a question, a polite answer, an awkward pause, then silence or a practiced exit. The looping conversations with strangers are everywhere, fleeting encounters that, when examined, repeat themselves with eerie consistency. These conversations feel disposable, yet strangely ritualistic. Each time you enter the script, there is a sense of déjà vu. You hear yourself saying words you've said before, maybe hundreds of times, to faces you'll never see again. The stranger across from you does the same, each of you playing a part written by culture, safety, or boredom. You swap stories you don't care about, rehearse opinions that mean nothing, share laughter that's just noise. Most people believe they are being polite or social, but looping conversations with strangers serve a deeper function. They are social lubrication, a way to pass time, avoid discomfort, or test the waters of human connection without real risk. These loops provide a sense of belonging in the world, a reminder that, for a moment, you are seen, even if the seeing is superficial. The cost of these looping conversations with strangers is subtle alienation. The more you repeat them, the less real they feel. You begin to question whether you are capable of authentic connection, or if your personality is just a set of responses triggered by situation. You may feel relief when the conversation ends, or disappointment that nothing of substance was exchanged. Psychologically, looping conversations with strangers are a defense mechanism. They keep distance, preventing vulnerability while offering the illusion of connection. For some, the loop is a source of comfort, a way to practice being social, to avoid loneliness without the threat of intimacy. For others, it is a source of dread, a reminder that most human interactions are structured, empty, unmemorable. Over time, these loops can become self-fulfilling. You enter each conversation expecting nothing, and so nothing is risked or gained. The questions are safe, the answers predictable. Even when you want to break the pattern, habit pulls you back. Talk about the weather, mention the traffic, offer a joke. The stranger becomes a placeholder, a role, a shadow you pass through and leave behind. If you find yourself trapped in looping conversations with strangers tonight, notice the urge to retreat or to perform. Ask yourself what you might risk saying, even if only a little more honest, a little less scripted. You may find that the loop can be broken with a genuine question or an unexpected truth. Or you may discover that the loop is there for a reason, that safety, even in small doses, is sometimes all you need. Looping conversations with strangers are not failures. They are a reflection of how the mind manages uncertainty and longing. You will have thousands in your life, most forgotten. But every so often, the loop will break, and something real will emerge. A connection, a moment of understanding, a memory that endures. Until then, the world spins on its small talk, looping endlessly from one encounter to the next.
Breaking free from fate. You feel the weight of expectation, your family's hopes, society's rules, the predictions others make about who you are and what you will become. You sense a pattern in your own choices, a path that seems to have been set before you arrived. Breaking free from fate is the wish to step outside the pattern, to disrupt the story you were handed, to prove, even to yourself, that you are more than a character in someone else's plot. Fate is not always a belief in destiny or the supernatural. It is the sum of influences, genes, upbringing, circumstance, habit, that shape your possibilities. The mind craves order, so it tells stories about what must happen, what cannot be avoided, what is meant to be. You see the loops everywhere, parents becoming their parents, mistakes echoing through generations, opportunities missed because that's just the way things go. Most people live with fate as a background hum, a gentle pressure that guides big decisions and small reactions. You resist when you can, then surrender when you're tired, telling yourself it was always going to end this way. Sometimes you try to break free with dramatic gestures, moving across the world, changing careers, ending relationships. But the deeper pattern often reasserts itself, and you find yourself back where you began. The cost of believing in fate is resignation. You may give up on change before you begin, or sabotage your own efforts out of fear that nothing can truly alter the course. The story becomes a prophecy. You act as if it's true, and so it becomes true. Fate, in this sense, is not imposed from outside, but grown from within. Psychologically, breaking free from fate requires awareness and courage. It demands a willingness to see the pattern,
to notice when you are living on autopilot, to choose differently even when it feels unnatural. The process is slow. Habits and beliefs do not yield easily. You may fail many times, returning to old loops before something shifts. Each act of resistance, each small deviation, is a victory over the invisible script. Culture reinforces fate with myths of destiny and purpose, but also celebrates those who escape. You are taught to admire rebels and innovators, yet punished when you stray too far. The paradox is that freedom is always costly. It requires leaving behind the safety of the expected, risking failure, facing the unknown. If you find yourself struggling to break free from fate tonight, pause. Notice the story you were telling yourself about what is possible. Ask whether the script is truly yours, or inherited, or simply unexamined. You do not have to rewrite your life in a single act. Change comes in moments, choosing a different word, taking a new route, listening to a desire that doesn't fit the pattern. Breaking free from fate is not a guarantee of happiness or success. It is a commitment to being awake, to refusing the easy loop. You may never escape completely, but you can widen the circle, disrupt the rhythm, introduce uncertainty where once there was only inevitability. In that act, you reclaim your agency, even if the pattern remains.
Generational time loops. You notice how families repeat themselves? Attitudes, habits, secrets, wounds passed down like heirlooms? You see yourself in an old photograph wearing the same expression as a grandparent you barely knew. Arguments echo through generations. Ambitions are inherited or rejected. And patterns of love and harm replicate in new forms. These are generational time loops, the slow recursion of history through blood and memory. Generational time loops are not always visible. They live in language, in silence, in the way you hold your body, in the dreams you chase or run from. You inherit more than genetics. You inherit coping strategies, fears, beliefs about what is possible or forbidden. The mind encodes these lessons deeply, making them feel like instinct rather than influence. You wake up one day acting out a script you never agreed to write. Most people sense generational time loops when they become parents, or when loss forces them to look backward. You hear your mother's voice in your own, see your father's anxieties mirrored in your choices, feel a tug toward or away from traditions that defined your childhood. You may try to break the loop, vowing never to repeat what hurt you, or striving to recreate what felt safe. But the pull of the loop is powerful. It hides in unconscious habit, in the logic of, that's just how we do things. The cost of generational time loops is repetition without growth. Trauma is recycled, dreams are deferred, resentments linger long after their origin is forgotten. You may feel trapped, living out problems that belong to another time, another person. The loop robs you of authorship, making the future a rerun of the past. Psychologically, these loops persist because they offer stability and identity. Family systems are resilient, designed to preserve themselves. Change threatens the system. The loop resists new stories. But the same resilience can be a source of healing. Patterns, once seen, can be questioned, softened, reshaped. It takes courage to break the loop, but even small shifts ripple forward, altering the possibilities for those who come after. Culture often romanticizes or pathologizes family patterns, but rarely helps you change them. You are left to navigate the loop alone, to wonder whether you are doomed to repeat or destined to rebel. Every choice is shaped by what came before, but also by your awareness of the loop itself. If you find yourself caught in a generational time loop tonight, pause. Name the pattern. Trace its origin. Ask whether it belongs to you. Forgiveness of yourself, of those who came before, is part of the work. The loop will not vanish, but you can alter its shape, soften its hold. Each act of awareness is an act of freedom. Generational time loops are not inescapable fates. They are invitations to notice, to question, to rewrite. You are not just a link in a chain, but a node in a network, capable of redirecting energy, changing outcomes. The loop may persist, but your awareness is the beginning of a new story, one that might echo differently through those who follow. I knew this would happen phenomenon. You watch events unfold, and a familiar thought surfaces. I knew this would happen. It feels like certainty, the mind's quiet pride and prediction. Maybe you foresaw a breakup, an accident, a professional failure, or the collapse of something you hoped would last. The I knew this would happen phenomenon is not about prophecy or wisdom. It is the brain's retroactive confidence, the rewriting of memory to give chaos the comfort of foresight. The phenomenon is psychological, not mystical. The mind dislikes unpredictability. It wants patterns and meaning. When something bad happens, you search your memories for warning signs. Hindsight bias smooths out doubt and ambiguity, leaving only a trail of signs you missed, but now claim you saw all along. I knew this would happen is less about knowledge and more about control, the wish to feel that the world is not random, that suffering could have been avoided, that you were not as blind as you felt. Most people experience this quietly, rarely admitting how many failed predictions they have forgotten. The wins are remembered, the losses are edited out. You recall the worry that proved justified, not the countless others that faded into irrelevance. The phenomenon grows stronger with regret or trauma. The more painful the outcome, the more desperately the mind insists it was inevitable. The cost is guilt and self-doubt. You become trapped in self-blame, convinced you should have acted on your supposed knowledge. The narrative becomes, if only I had listened to myself, though, in truth, the signals were never as clear as you remember. You judge others the same way, ascribing wisdom or foolishness based on results, not process. The present is rewritten by the demands of the past. Psychologically, the I knew this would happen phenomenon is a defense. It protects you from the anxiety of randomness, from the humiliation of surprise. The illusion of foresight is soothing. It lets you feel in control, even if that control is just a story. But the defense is fragile. Too much certainty leads to fatalism. Too much self-blame leads to paralysis. The truth is always more uncertain. The signals are always more ambiguous than the mind will admit. Culture amplifies the phenomenon. Hindsight is embedded in news, in history, in the way stories are told. Victories are seen as inevitable, failures as obvious. The complexity of the world is flattened into a script you claim you knew all along. Social media, with its endless retrospectives and hot takes, rewards those who shout, "I saw this coming," loudest. If you find yourself repeating the "I knew this would happen" phenomenon tonight, pause. Ask what signals you missed, what doubts you ignored, what other possibilities you discounted. Accept that prediction is always uncertain, that memory is always selective. Forgive yourself for being surprised. The world is unpredictable. Knowledge is always incomplete. The "I knew this would happen" phenomenon is not wisdom, but a coping strategy. You can honor your intuition without surrendering to the tyranny of hindsight. The next time you were certain, remember how many times you were wrong and how often life resists prediction. Certainty is a comfort, but humility is the only cure.
Life as a labyrinth, not a line. You were taught that life is a journey, a straight line from point A to point B, from birth to death, from dream to achievement. But with every turn, every reversal, every dead end, it becomes clear life is a labyrinth, not a line. There are loops, false starts, paths that double back and cross over themselves, routes you retrace only to find yourself lost again. The metaphor is both comforting and cold. The labyrinth offers the promise that there is always another way, another chance to begin again, but it also erases the certainty of progress. You can walk for years and never find the exit, or arrive at a place that feels familiar but see it with new eyes. The line promises arrival. The labyrinth promises only movement. Most people experience life as a labyrinth, not a line. In moments of transition or failure, you lose a job, end a relationship, confront a crisis, and suddenly the map you were following no longer applies. The sense of being lost is both terrifying and liberating. You look for signs, for patterns, for shortcuts that don't exist. You wonder if the walls are closing in, or if you are making progress by accident. The cost of the labyrinth is uncertainty. The mind craves resolution, a story with a beginning, middle, and end. In the labyrinth, endings are temporary, victories are partial, mistakes repeat themselves. You learn to accept that every path is provisional, that certainty is a luxury. Regret grows sharper, longing for missed opportunities, sharper still. But so does gratitude for unexpected meetings, for moments of clarity, for beauty found in unlikely corners. Psychologically, living in the labyrinth is an exercise in resilience. The mind must learn to tolerate confusion, to persist without guarantees, to adapt to changing circumstances. The urge to impose order never fully disappears, but you grow less attached to the illusion of the line. You begin to see value in detours, in pauses, in the roundabout way life teaches its hardest lessons. Culture prefers the line, a story with purpose, progress, destiny. But the labyrinth is closer to reality, a place where meaning is made along the way, where the journey is not about reaching the center, but about learning how to walk the path. Success and failure are temporary states. Wisdom is the willingness to keep moving, even when the map is lost. If you find yourself lost in the labyrinth tonight, pause. Notice the temptation to judge your path, to compare your journey to others. Let go of the need for a straight line. Trust that every turn, even the wrong ones, is part of the whole. The labyrinth is not a trap, but a mirror, a way of seeing that life is complicated, and that's not a flaw. Life as a labyrinth, not a line, is a challenge to the myth of progress. It is also an invitation to wander, to linger, to accept the mystery. You are not here to arrive, but to walk.
Quantum time and parallel pasts.
You read about quantum mechanics, about particles that exist in multiple places at once, about decisions that spawn countless universes, each a shade different from the last. You begin to wonder if your life, too, is unfolding in parallel, every choice leading to a fork, every regret mirrored by another self who chose differently. Quantum time and parallel pasts are not just scientific theories, they are psychological landscapes, haunting the edges of memory and imagination. Quantum time breaks the illusion of a single, unbroken story. Instead, the past is a field of possibilities, paths you might have taken, words you might have said, lives you might have lived. Some days the sense of multiplicity is acute. You dream of an ex you never called, picture the city you never moved to, taste the dinner you never ate. These ghosts of parallel pasts linger, more vivid than the reality you actually chose. Most people feel the weight of quantum time in moments of regret or longing. You wonder what would have happened if you had turned left instead of right, said yes instead of no, stayed instead of leaving. Each possibility feels real, alive, waiting just beyond the surface. You sense that your life is one of many, a single thread in a tangled web of choices, each pulling at the present in subtle ways. The cost of quantum time and parallel pasts is existential unease. You struggle to make peace with the paths you abandoned, to forgive yourself for not being able to live every life at once. The mind is built for singularity, for narrative closure, but the world of quantum time is fractured, unfinished. Every choice is haunted by its alternatives, every memory shadowed by what could have been. Psychologically, this multiplicity can become a trap. You ruminate on lost opportunities, become paralyzed by choice, convinced that every decision is a test you have already failed. The present becomes thin, less substantial than the weight of the possible. But the same multiplicity can also be freeing. If every life is possible, then the one you are living is not predetermined. It is chosen, renewed with every act, every word, every breath. Culture struggles with the concept of parallel pasts. Myths of destiny and fate give way to stories of multiverses and alternative timelines. The desire for certainty is replaced by curiosity, by the sense that every regret is another story lived by another self. You are taught to seek meaning in the choices you made, but rarely encouraged to forgive yourself for the infinite lives you could never live. If you find yourself haunted by quantum time and parallel pasts tonight, let the feeling in. Notice the forked paths, the shadow lives, the selves that might have been. Mourn them if you must, but also celebrate the richness of possibility. The present is the only certainty, but it is shaped by 1,000 possible histories. Quantum time and parallel pasts are not answers, but questions about freedom, about identity, about what it means to be alive in a world where anything might have happened and only one thing did. You are the sum of every choice and every possibility, a single consciousness flickering among infinite selves. The past is never singular, but you are always here.
The repeat button in relationships. You notice the argument beginning, the familiar tension building in the room. You know where this is going before it starts. The phrases you'll say, the defenses they'll use, the way it will end in exhausted silence or the careful restoration of normalcy. The repeat button in relationships is not metaphorical. It is as real and mechanical as any device. Patterns set early are replayed endlessly. Blame, retreat, apology, reconciliation, and the cycle begins again. You think it's just them or just you, but the loop is both. Every relationship finds its pattern, a set of cues and responses that play out regardless of circumstance. You fall in love with someone new and discover months or years later that the pattern has returned. The same fights, the same disappointments, the same secret hopes for change. The repeat button in relationships is hidden at first, disguised by novelty, but soon enough it reveals itself. Most people believe that love, friendship, and family are about growth. In practice, relationships are often about repetition. You choose partners who fit your script, seek out friends who reinforce your worldview, replay roles learned in childhood until they feel inevitable. You want change, but habit is powerful. The same words come out, the same wounds are exposed, the same walls go up. The cost of the repeat button in relationships is a slow erosion of hope. Each loop deepens resentment, makes forgiveness harder, turns small conflicts into rituals. You may come to see yourself as powerless, a character trapped in a story you did not write. You may blame your partner or yourself, but the real culprit is the pattern, so deeply etched that it persists even when you understand it. Psychologically, the repeat button in relationships is a defense against the unknown. Predictable pain feels safer than unpredictable joy. Old wounds are familiar, new experiences are risky. The mind prefers the certainty of repetition, even when it hurts. You become an expert at reading signals, anticipating outcomes, playing your part to perfection. Culture reinforces the pattern. Media, stories, and advice all reduce relationships to a set of cliches, like communication is key, love conquers all, opposites attract. But real relationships are often nothing but a negotiation between competing loops. The advice does not break the pattern, it only decorates it. If you find yourself pressing the repeat button in relationships tonight, notice the moment the loop begins. Try pausing, even briefly. Name the pattern aloud to yourself or your partner. Ask what would happen if you changed just one response, a different word, a longer silence, a refusal to escalate. The pattern may not break, but even a small disruption is a beginning. The repeat button in relationships is not a flaw, but a feature of human connection. Love is built on routine, trust on reliability, but growth requires risk, the willingness to let go of the script, to let the other person be new, even if only for a moment. Each attempt to change the pattern is an act of hope, even if it fails. The pattern is strong, but you are not powerless.
The ritual of regret. Late at night or in a quiet moment, the mind drifts backward, sifting through old decisions, failed opportunities, sharp words, lost chances. The ritual of regret is not a rare event. It is a private ceremony, repeated countless times across a lifetime. Regret arrives with its own script, a series of images, feelings, and stories replayed in perfect detail, as if repetition could rewrite the past. The ritual of regret is deeply psychological. The mind wants to make sense of pain, to understand mistakes, to impose order on the chaos of living. You think, if only I had chosen differently, if only I had said nothing, if only I had left earlier. The mind cycles through alternatives, weighing and reweighing each one. The process is exhausting, but oddly soothing, a familiar discomfort. Most people practice the ritual of regret in secret. It is often quiet, almost gentle, a lullaby of disappointment sung to yourself. But the repetition has power. Each return deepens the groove, making it easier to find and harder to escape. You come to believe the story of your regret more than the reality of what actually happened. The ritual becomes a defining part of your identity. I am the one who failed. I am the one who missed the chance. The cost of the ritual of regret is a narrowing of possibility. The more you rehearse the past, the less you see the future. Regret shrinks the world to what cannot be changed, leaving you with the illusion that your story is already finished. You grow cautious, afraid of making new mistakes, convinced that the past is proof of future failure. Psychologically, the ritual of regret is a way to avoid grief. Mourning what is lost is painful. Regret is a distraction, a substitute for acceptance. The ritual can be productive, briefly. Reflection brings wisdom, insight, humility. But the loop is endless if you do not let go. At some point, the repetition becomes self-punishment, a way of holding on to pain rather than risking the unknown of healing. Culture romanticizes regret. Songs, poems, and films return to it endlessly. We are taught that regret is evidence of depth, of conscience, of maturity. In truth, it is evidence of unfinished business, of a mind unwilling or unable to move forward. If you find yourself deep in the ritual of regret tonight, pause. Notice the shape of the loop, the words you always return to, the feelings that never quite change. Ask what you are afraid to mourn, what lesson you are refusing to learn. The ritual can be broken, but only by acceptance, not of the mistake, but of your own imperfection. The ritual of regret is not a moral failing. It is a mark of being human. But the mind deserves peace, and the past cannot be lived again. Let the ritual run its course, then let it go. The future waits outside the loop.
Micro loops in daily habits. You start your day with the same series of actions. Brush your teeth, check your phone, pour the coffee, glance at the news. The steps are so automatic, you hardly notice them. These are micro loops in daily habits, tiny cycles of behavior repeated hundreds or thousands of times, shaping the texture of your life without fanfare or reflection. Micro loops in daily habits are not just routines, they are the architecture of survival. The mind builds habits to conserve energy, to avoid decision fatigue, to streamline the chaos of living. The repetition is soothing, a way to anchor yourself in the world. You follow the loop not because you chose it, but because it has become invisible. You only notice it when something disrupts the sequence, a forgotten key, an empty coffee can, a change in schedule that leaves you disoriented and irritable. Most people move through microloops unconsciously, but their power is immense. Tiny habits compound into character, into destiny. You think you are making choices, but much of your life is shaped by what you no longer need to choose. The loops govern not just actions, but thoughts, how you interpret the world, how you respond to emotion, even how you talk to yourself. The cost of microloops in daily habits is subtle. Life shrinks to the size of your routines. Novelty becomes uncomfortable. Change feels dangerous. You risk living in a perpetual present, each day indistinguishable from the last, memory and hope alike, dulled by repetition. You may grow restless or numb or anxious without knowing why. Psychologically, microloops are efficient but inflexible. They free the mind for more complex tasks, but also trap you in patterns that may no longer serve you. Bad habits are loops too: procrastination, negative self-talk, unhealthy cravings. The longer a loop is repeated, the deeper it is etched, the harder it becomes to notice, let alone change. Culture both encourages and exploits microloops. Brands want to become your habit, your morning news source, your exercise app. Society rewards predictability, punishes deviation, celebrates routine as evidence of discipline. But what is discipline if it is only unconscious repetition? If you find yourself caught in microloops in daily habits tonight, pause. Notice the sequence, the order, the automatic nature of your actions. Try breaking a loop. Swap the order. Skip a step. Add something new. The discomfort is a sign of change, a reminder that you are still capable of choice. Microloops in daily habits are not failures of imagination. They are how the mind survives the demands of modern life. But you are more than your routines. Each day, you have the chance to notice, to disrupt, to create a new loop, however small. In that act, you become conscious again, an author, not just a character, in the story of your days.
The trap of nostalgia. You find yourself longing for a time you can barely remember, a childhood summer, the simplicity of school days, a city you left behind, a love that ended years ago. The sensation is warm, enveloping, seductive, but nostalgia is not a window. It is a trap, a loop that lures you away from the present into a version of the past that never quite existed. The trap of nostalgia is subtle. At first, it offers comfort, a soothing balm for the stresses and disappointments of now. You scroll through old photos, revisit favorite songs, tell stories that grow rosier with each retelling. The ache feels bittersweet, but it is the sweetness that keeps you circling back, convinced that what you lost was purer, simpler, better. You edit out the boredom, the fear, the loneliness that lived alongside those golden moments. The past becomes myth. Most people drift into the trap of nostalgia during times of uncertainty or pain. The mind, craving relief, turns backwards. Memory rearranges itself, polishing away the inconvenient details. You begin to believe that happiness is behind you, that the world was kinder, you were braver, love was easier. The present pales by comparison, dull and demanding. The future recedes. The cost of the trap of nostalgia is gradual disconnection. You stop engaging with what is in front of you. You resist change, avoid risk, become suspicious of the unfamiliar. Relationships suffer as you compare real people to remembered ghosts. Ambition falters, hope is replaced by longing. You may grow impatient, bitter, or withdrawn, unable to reconcile the world as it is with the world as you imagined it once was. Culture amplifies the trap of nostalgia. Entire industries are built on retro fashion, music, television, and food. Politicians promise a return to better times. Advertisers sell you the comfort of memory, curated and packaged for maximum emotional impact. The narrative of the good old days is repeated until it feels like truth. If you find yourself ensnared by the trap of nostalgia tonight, notice the feeling without judgment. Ask what you are longing for: safety, certainty, love, or simply escape from the discomfort of now.
Remember that the past, for all its beauty, is gone, and that your memory is a creation, not a record. Try turning your attention forward, even if only for a moment. Allow the ache to remind you what matters, but do not let it define what is possible. The trap of nostalgia is not a failure of character. It is a side effect of being human, of needing comfort in a world that often disappoints. But the present deserves your attention too. The past cannot be relived, only remembered. Growth requires risk, and risk requires letting go, if only a little, of the longing that would keep you spinning in place.
Remembering things that never happened. You were certain you were there, at a family reunion, at a concert, during an argument. You can describe the room, the weather, the conversation. Yet someone insists you were not. The photos don't include you. The story doesn't fit. The timeline is wrong. You find yourself remembering things that never happened. The sensation is quietly unsettling, an invisible crack in your faith in your own mind. Most people dismiss these false memories as harmless quirks. But the phenomenon is more than forgetfulness. The mind is not a camera. It is an editor, a storyteller, a fabricator. Each time you recall an event, the memory is rewritten, altered by suggestion, emotion, and expectation. Over time, stories blend, details migrate. Someone else's experience becomes your own. Dreams are mistaken for real events. The experience of remembering things that never happened can be subtle, a misplaced detail, a date you insist upon, a face you know you've seen before. Or it can be dramatic, entire conversations, relationships, or traumas that feel as real as anything you've ever lived. The conviction is total, immune to evidence or argument. You feel betrayed by those who contradict you, confused by the absence of proof, defensive about your own reality. The cost is a quiet erosion of trust. Trust in yourself, in others, in the shared fabric of reality. You may become suspicious of your own mind, second-guessing memories, doubting feelings, retreating into silence rather than risk being wrong. Relationships suffer as stories fail to align. The more you insist, the more you feel isolated. Psychologically, remembering things that never happened is the mind's attempt to make meaning from fragments. False memories often fill gaps, unanswered questions, unresolved feelings, unexplained gaps in the story of your life. Sometimes they are born from trauma, from a desperate need for coherence in a world that often withholds it. Sometimes they are simply accidents of the mind's architecture, a trick of association, a failure of recall. Culture rarely acknowledges how common this is. We value eyewitness accounts, build histories from collective memory, reward confident storytelling. Yet the boundary between fact and fiction in memory is porous. The more you repeat a story, the truer it feels. The mind is not built for accuracy, but for narrative. If you find yourself remembering things that never happened tonight, be gentle with yourself. Notice the sensation, certainty laced with doubt, comfort mixed with confusion. Accept that memory is always provisional, always incomplete. The truth is rarely as simple as you want it to be. Let the error be a reminder of your mind's creativity, its need for connection and meaning. Remembering things that never happened is not a flaw, but a feature. You are always living in stories, some more true than others. The past is less certain than you believe, but the present is always available. You do not need to defend your memories. You only need to live with their uncertainty.
Time anomalies in science. You expect time to move forward, regular, predictable, unchanging. But science reveals that time is anything but simple. From the twin paradox of relativity to black holes, wormholes, and the deep mysteries of quantum mechanics, time anomalies in science challenge your most basic intuitions. The arrow of time, so obvious in daily life, bends, loops, and sometimes even halts on the edges of known reality. Time anomalies in science begin with relativity. Einstein showed that time is not absolute. If you travel fast enough or linger near immense gravity, time slows. Seconds stretch into hours. Years pass in moments. The twin paradox is real. One twin travels the stars and returns younger than the sibling who stayed behind. The effect is minuscule at everyday speeds, but undeniable. Satellites in orbit must account for this distortion, or GPS would fail. Deeper still are the mysteries of quantum mechanics. At the smallest scales, time becomes slippery. Particles seem to exist in multiple states at once, their pasts and futures entangled. Causality blurs. Events in the future can influence the past, or at least the equations suggest this. Experiments with entangled particles hint at a reality where information travels instantly, where cause and effect may not be so strictly ordered. Black holes represent another frontier. At the event horizon, time stops for an outside observer. Inside, space and time may swap roles entirely. The interior of a black hole, a place where every possible future converges. Some theories propose wormholes, shortcuts through space-time that could, in principle, connect different eras as easily as different places. The cost of facing time anomalies in science is existential unease. The solidity of the world gives way to uncertainty. You realize that your sense of past, present, and future is only a local phenomenon, a trick of biology, not a law of nature. The possibility that time is an illusion or a variable or a multidimensional field is both thrilling and terrifying. Psychologically, these discoveries are hard to absorb. The mind prefers a single timeline, a story with a beginning and end. Science says otherwise. You are forced to hold competing truths, that your life is a straight line, and that, from another perspective, it may be a spiral, a knot, or a field of endless branching. Culture turns time anomalies in science into science fiction, time machines, alternate histories, multiverses. But the real strangeness is deeper and quieter. Your heart keeps time. Your mind arranges events into order. Nature itself may have other plans. If you find yourself troubled by time anomalies in science tonight, let the questions remain unanswered. You are not built to see time as it really is. Wonder is enough. The anomalies remind you that the universe is stranger than you can imagine, that certainty is always provisional, that every moment is both unique and entangled with all others. Time anomalies in science do not change how you live. Alarm clocks still ring, memories still fade. But they invite humility, curiosity, and awe. The arrow of time is real, but so are the loops, the pauses, the impossible paths that science glimpses and cannot explain. Lost time in trance and flow. You look up from your work, your music, your drawing, your run, and the hours have vanished. The world outside is changed. The light has shifted. Your body aches. A meal is overdue. You cannot say exactly what happened, only that you were elsewhere.
This is lost time in trance and flow, a paradoxical state where presence is so total that awareness of time itself disappears. Lost time in trance and flow is not the same as distraction. It is not the mindless scrolling, not the passive waiting. Here, attention is absolute. The outside world fades, your sense of self narrows to a single point of focus. Action and awareness merge. Musicians call it being in the pocket. Athletes call it the zone. Artists, coders, even daydreamers know the feeling. A suspension of ordinary consciousness, a sense that time has both stretched and collapsed. Most people chase this state without realizing it. You schedule your day for productivity, crave deep work, lose yourself in hobbies that demand your full attention. When you enter trance or flow, anxiety recedes, distractions fall away, and the voice of doubt grows quiet. The task becomes effortless, even joyful. But when you return, you are surprised by the clock. Minutes become hours. The world went on without you. The cost of lost time in trance and flow is a gentle disorientation. You feel the loss of what you missed, the conversation you didn't hear, the call you didn't answer, the time that passed without your notice. There can be guilt, especially if the flow was selfish or the trance was escapist. But more often, the loss is a kind of offering. Time surrendered to a moment that mattered more than its measure. Psychologically, lost time in trance and flow is a feature, not a flaw. The mind is built to slip into these states. When skill meets challenge, when intention meets immersion, the machinery of timekeeping is suspended. The brain shifts its rhythms, the sense of self is dissolved, and experience is coded in deep, memorable ways. These moments become anchor points in memory, even if their duration is uncertain. Culture both values and fears lost time. Productivity is prized, but so is being in the moment. We celebrate flow in athletes and artists, but warn against trance in the form of obsession or addiction. Schools and workplaces try to engineer flow, but often settle for distraction. The paradox remains: the most meaningful moments are often those least visible to the clock. If you find yourself swept into lost time in trance and flow tonight, do not fight the experience. Notice the transition, the narrowing of attention, the surrender to the task, the gentle forgetting of self. Allow yourself the loss, knowing it is also a gain. These are the moments the mind remembers, even if the clock cannot. Lost time in trance and flow is not absence, but presence in another form. You are not missing from your life, but more deeply within it. The return to ordinary time may be jarring, but you carry with you the afterglow of immersion, the quiet joy of having been nowhere but here.
The endless scroll. Digital time loops. You pick up your phone for a quick check, a notification, a message, a glance at the headlines. 30 minutes later, you look up, disoriented. You cannot recall what you've seen, only the sensation of endless motion. The feed never ends. The scroll is infinite. This is the endless scroll, digital time loops that trap your mind in a cycle of stimulation without satisfaction. The endless scroll is engineered. Social media, news apps, video platforms are designed to keep you moving, never arriving. There is always more content, another post, a fresh update, a new suggestion. Each swipe is a miniature gamble. Will this be interesting, upsetting, inspiring, funny? The uncertainty keeps you hooked. You lose your sense of time, of purpose, even of hunger or fatigue. You promise yourself just one more, and the loop continues. Most people underestimate the power of digital time loops. You believe you are in control, that you can put the phone down at any moment.
But the architecture of the scroll is stronger than willpower. Notifications interrupt your thoughts. Algorithms learn your preferences. Autoplay keeps you watching. The line between use and misuse blurs. The endless scroll is not just a habit, it is a digital trance. The cost of the endless scroll digital time loops is subtle, then sharp. Hours vanish, attention fractures, real-world connections weaken. You feel restless, anxious, never quite satisfied. Sleep suffers, creativity fades, conversation shortens. The mind is overloaded but undernourished, stuffed with fragments but starved for meaning. You may grow defensive, minimizing the loop's impact, but the evidence accumulates. Missed deadlines, forgotten plans, a shrinking sense of possibility. Psychologically, digital time loops exploit the same circuitry as gambling and addiction. The unpredictability of the next reward, the novelty of new content, the validation of likes and comments, each keeps you circling. The brain's need for closure, for story, is hijacked by the infinite feed. Instead of a beginning, middle, and end, you get only repetition, an endless now. Culture both creates and mocks the endless scroll. Memes warn about doom scrolling. Articles urge digital detox, while the platforms themselves grow more addictive. Productivity gurus sell focus and mindfulness as cures, but the loop persists. The world is designed for distraction. Escape is an act of rebellion. If you find yourself trapped in the endless scroll digital time loops tonight, pause, put the device down. Notice the urge to return, the discomfort of stillness. Ask what you hoped to find, what you're avoiding, what you have lost. The loop is not a sign of failure, but a symptom of a world always hungry for your attention. The endless scroll can be broken. You can reclaim time, create boundaries, choose content rather than be chosen by it. But the first step is awareness, a recognition that time once lost to the loop is not easily regained. You live in an age of infinite feeds, but your mind was built for stories that end.
Why the past feels closer at night. Night falls, the world slows, distractions recede. You are left alone with your thoughts, and the past draws near. Details forgotten in the daylight sharpen. Old regrets, childhood memories, words you wish you'd spoken, faces you once knew. This is why the past feels closer at night. The mind's boundaries are softer, time grows porous, and yesterday presses in with gentle insistence. The effect is physiological. Darkness triggers melatonin. The brain shifts from alertness to reflection, sensory input dwindles. With fewer interruptions, the mind turns inward. The chatter of the day is replaced by the echo of memory. You recall dreams, unfinished conversations, long-forgotten decisions. The boundary between then and now blurs, and the past becomes vivid, almost present. Most people notice this without knowing why. Insomnia is common. Restlessness grows as the hour grows late. You replay events, relive old emotions, sometimes with longing, sometimes with pain. Nostalgia deepens, anxieties surface, ambitions from another era reappear. Night is when the unfinished business of the past returns for your attention. The cost of the past feeling closer at night is mixed. There is comfort in revisiting old joys, in reconnecting with who you were, but there is also risk. Regret grows sharper, shame more vivid, losses more acute. You may dwell on mistakes, spiral into what-ifs, or feel haunted by opportunities missed. The dark amplifies feeling, and the mind, seeking meaning, is drawn to the unresolved. Psychologically, the phenomenon is natural. The mind seeks closure. During the day, you are buffered by routine, by stimulus, by the demands of the present. At night, with nothing to distract you, the mind revisits unfinished business. This is when integration happens. Memories are sorted, emotions processed, self-narrative updated. It can be healing, but it can also be overwhelming. Culture reflects the closeness of the past at night. Stories are told by firelight, confessions made in the dark, diaries written before sleep. Myths and rituals arise from this time, ghost stories, midnight prayers, lullabies. Night is the time of memory, for better or worse. If you find yourself drawn backward, feeling why the past feels closer at night, allow the feeling to exist. Notice which memories surface, what emotions accompany them, what remains unhealed or unfinished. Let the night be a time of gentle inquiry, not judgment. Tomorrow will come, and the past will recede, but tonight you can listen. Why the past feels closer at night is not a flaw, but an opportunity. In the quiet, you can make peace with what lingers, honor what matters, release what holds you. The night is not for forgetting, but for remembering, and perhaps for letting go.
Is the end just the beginning? You stand at the edge of something. A job finished, a relationship over, a chapter closed. The air is thick with the weight of ending. You feel relief or sorrow or just the numb clarity that comes with crossing a line you cannot uncross. The question lingers, persistent as a shadow. Is the end just the beginning? Endings are rarely as simple as they seem. The world teaches you to mark them with ritual and ceremony. Graduations, funerals, breakups, retirements. Each one is framed as final, an unmistakable break between what was and what will never be again. You are told to move on, to let go, to accept what is finished. Yet beneath the surface, endings rarely stay contained. They bleed into what follows, their echoes shaping the path ahead. Most people experience endings as both closure and confusion. You crave the certainty of over, but life resists clean boundaries. A friendship ends, and you find its patterns repeating in new relationships. A loss carves out space in you, but the shape of that absence quietly guides your next choices. Even when you think you have finished grieving, forgiving, forgetting, some thread persists, tugging you forward, looping back, reminding you that the end is porous. The cost of believing in final endings is a kind of existential fatigue. You put pressure on yourself to be done with pain, with regret, with the person you once were. You expect transformation to arrive on schedule, as if time itself will enforce a neat division. When renewal does not come, you feel stuck, as though you have failed to start over. The narrative of clean breaks is comforting, but also misleading. In reality, every ending is messy, every boundary leaky, every over just a new phase in disguise. Psychologically, the question, is the end just the beginning, points to how the mind makes sense of time. The desire for closure is real, the need for continuity deeper still. The mind recycles old stories, lessons, and even traumas, folding them into new ambitions, new rituals, new relationships. Each ending becomes material for the next draft of the self. Sometimes this is conscious. You vow never to make the same mistake. More often, it is unconscious. The same patterns resurfacing in new forms, the unfinished business of yesterday, driving the questions of tomorrow. Culture both celebrates and resists the cycle. Myths and stories are built on endings, apocalypses, retirements, deaths, but always a new dawn follows. Every ending is a beginning, the proverbs insist, as if to soothe the fear of loss.
You are encouraged to reinvent, to reimagine, to believe in second acts. Yet even as you try to embrace renewal, the past persists. The line between old and new is always blurred. If you find yourself wondering tonight, is the end just the beginning? Pause. Notice where you are standing, what has closed behind you, what is waiting ahead. Accept that it is not always clear. Some endings hurt, some free you, some fade without ceremony. Each one carries with it the seeds of what comes next, habits that linger, wounds that shape, dreams that refuse to die. The cycle is not punishment, it is how life continues. There is no need to force a new beginning or to rush the letting go. Endings demand grief, require rest, sometimes even celebrate relief. But eventually, without effort, a beginning asserts itself. The habits of yesterday become the curiosity of tomorrow. What you thought was lost becomes the foundation of a new version of yourself, quietly, insistently, as certain as sunrise. Is the end just the beginning? Not always. Sometimes the end is simply the end, a space you must honor and cross. But more often, the story does not stop. It spirals, folds, renews. The past informs the present hints at the future, and you are always, in some way, beginning again. The loop is not a trap, but a rhythm, evidence that even in loss, there is movement. Tonight, at the threshold, you can rest. You can grieve or celebrate, rage or surrender. Whatever you choose, know that something new will eventually begin, even if you do not see it yet. The end is never the whole story. In time, beginnings return, disguised as endings,